Call the meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and sorry for the late start. We just had a little technical glitch there, and we'll start off with recognitions. Tony is going to introduce this subject, which is our all-state choir participants.
Yes, thanks, Mr. President. I'd like to invite Carol Dolly and the 8 Hudson Middle School students that participated in the Wisconsin Middle Level 2015 All-State Choir up to the microphone.
It looks like we only have half of our group here, but I will let them introduce themselves to you, and then I'll tell you how they got to where they got.
My name's Dante Sitembeco.
I'm Carson Garber.
I'm Mackenzie Kroll.
I'm Alex Heidemann.
Back in the fall, I auditioned all the 8th graders that were interested in auditioning for the All-State Choir. The auditions are similar to the Honors Choir, which you have already met participants in that through the years. But the All-State Choir is organized through the Wisconsin Choral Directors Association, and directors audition their own students, and then they rank them, and then they're selected. So there were other students that were names were submitted, but these were the 8 because of their high rankings that were able to participate in this. They meet in, their parents get them to Lawrence University, which is where we held the convention this year. It was part of the Wisconsin Choral Directors State Convention, and we bring in, the WCDA brings in a nationally known not composer, but a conductor. And what was this guy's last name? I forget. Dr. Mark
Boyle?
Thank you. That was his last name, yes. And he was from Seton Hill in Pennsylvania. The kids really liked him. He did a wonderful job. The music that the children do, well, they're not children, the young adults do, is far beyond what they're able to do in their regular middle school classes, because the middle school choirs in Hudson and other schools, it's everybody who wants to sing can. And you've got such varying abilities. But now when you have the all-state choir or an honors choir, these kids are all top of the line. And so they rehearsed with me after school several days. We missed our last rehearsal because of weather, but they got themselves to Appleton, and they met with 150 other kids from across the state with this guest director from Pennsylvania. And they rehearsed that weekend. They got to do lots of other things, and the weekend culminated with their presentation of a concert at Lawrence University. And this was back in second weekend in January. Now I'm going to let the kids tell you something about what they remember of that experience.
I enjoyed the director and all the music and everything, cause when we sang in rehearsal, it wasn't it didn't bring out the sound, but when we were on the stage, all the music you could hear yourselves, you could hear the baritones, the tenors, and everybody. So that's just what I liked about it, the music and director.
I like being surrounded by people who enjoy music as much as I do, and they don't have to be reminded to stop talking during rehearsals.
It was fun meeting new people all around Wisconsin, and I got to know some people really well, and I stay in touch with them.
I liked the whole experience from everyone coming together from around the whole Wisconsin area. And I liked the director because he was really funny, and we call him Dr. Bowtie because he always wore different bow ties every day. And he was very energized, and I liked the music, and we all just did a really good job.
Well, it sounds like a wonderful experience for all of you in a very beautiful setting. Congratulations.
Sorry, the other 4 couldn't be here.
Just a quick question. How many kids actually tried out again?
I hold those auditions in the fall along with singing in Wisconsin auditions, and the 8th graders can audition for both of those things at the same time. They just mark their audition sheet, and I never looked. There was probably 30, 35 that auditioned from Hudson Middle School.
Wow, awesome. Thanks.
Great. Well, thank you all for representing Hudson School District. Thank you for your passion for music. All right, we have now move on to reports, and first is the superintendent's report, which tonight has 5 subparts. So Mary, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. President, and board members, and those of our community members in the audience. Welcome. First, I'm going to talk about our official enrollment in January. It was actually January 9th of 2015. And what you see up on the chart is a comparison of our official enrollment in September, on September 19th, compared to our January enrollment. And essentially, there's not a lot of change. There is some variation by school, by grade level, by our total enrollment, but it is very similar to the September enrollment. And this is the count that we use for DPI and for state aid. So that's why it's in this format. If you would just look at the column that says DPI totals, it's right next to that gray line. And look at the bottom, you can see that the September totals were 5,534 students, and then in January, 5,530 students, so very little change, but there's up and down in each of our schools, and again, in each of the grade levels. We expect something that happens at the high school each year. We have some early graduation, so generally that number goes down in January, primarily because of that reason. There is something new on the chart that comes at this time of year, and that is the lower section that talks about homeschool. So the last time when I talked about this chart and the September enrollment, I said that the open enrolled numbers were not complete because that had not hit the deadline of when parents had to apply, not open enrollment, homeschool. So right now, this is the newest accurate total of 136 students who are homeschooled in our community. So that's new for this chart. And just in comparison, you might be interested in 2014, it was 143 students, and in 2013 is 131 students. So kind of a consistent number, again, like all the other numbers on this chart that goes up and down. So unless there are any questions, I'll move on to the next kindergarten registration.
Mr. President?
Lynn?
Mary, can you explain under the homeschool column or that line what the one to the right of the 12 is, the ungrade, un-GRD?
Oh, the ungraded?
Yes.
I'm not exactly sure, but I assume that they weren't identified as what grade level those students were in when they registered. That would be my guess. Any other questions? All right, moving on to kindergarten registration numbers. So each time in February, we have kindergartners for the next year registering in our schools, and we've been tracking that for a number of years. So you can see them by school, and you can see the total preliminary kindergarten registration, and that's what I really want to emphasize. This is very preliminary, and as you can see, each of the years, except for this one, is compared to the official account in September of our student kindergarten enrollment. And the historical data shows that those kindergarten numbers go up before we get to September. So right now we have 319 students that registered in February. We know that number is going to change, and the big question is, what will that be in September? So it's very similar to the number that we had in February 2012. So if you look at the yellow column, February 2012, 319 compared to 321. And at that time, coming in September in 2012, we had 391 students. So you can see that there is a growth in those kindergarten numbers over time, and you can see that played out by schools as well in each of these years. So we expect, based on historical data, that the 319 will be larger than it is presently when we actually approach fall enrollment. Any questions on that? And we would just encourage anyone in our community who has a kindergartner who has not registered to please call their school as soon as possible so that we can make sure that we start to include them in the numbers and start to plan for them for the coming year. All right, I'll move on to the primary election for the school board. That is February 17th, and we have 9 candidates. 1 candidate has withdrawn. I'll talk about that in just a minute. So really 8 candidates running for election for 3 seats on the school board. And we have, I don't know if we had all of the candidates here, but I would like them to stand up as I say their name. So Lowell Enerson, Joe Westerbarth, Butch Schultz, Christy Vitale, Sue Katas, Sandy Gerke, one of our board members, Pam Brokaw, Rob Brown, and then Nicole Lotto has withdrawn for family circumstances. So her name will still be on the ballot because once you fill out the paperwork, it continues on. So certainly we want to thank all of these candidates for their interest in the education and public schools of Hudson's students and look forward to this election. We hope lots of our community will take time to look at the video, which was a candidate forum that the candidates answered questions from the public. So that's on the cable channel. The HSO has also run articles and information about each of the candidates as well. So there are 3 seats. You vote for 3 in February. I just went through the order on the ballot, and the top 6 candidates with the highest votes move forward. The polling places will be the same as they have been in the past, and this election is the only one on the ballot, so the best place to get those results is the district website. So we'd encourage people to go to the district website. We will update it as information comes in. It may come in very quickly because of the this is the only race in February, moving on to the April election. So any questions about that or things you want to add?
Just real quick, just to confirm, you can get absentee ballots in up through this week, I believe? Is that correct?
Certainly there are absentee ballots available,
Okay.
and they would go to their municipality to get those.
Thank you.
So United Way, St. Croix Valley, certainly we want to recognize the contributions of our staff, our employees, to support worthwhile causes and programs and agencies in our area, including those in the school district. So this year, the campaign total of pledges to United Way by our employees, $9,300 and a little over $58. And United Way takes a portion of those dollars and turns it back into worthy programs in the Hudson School District. So a little over $9,000 will come back and used to support our students and programs. Last year, those programs were the Hudson High School Peer Helpers and the Elementary School's Angel Fund. So wonderful programs. It's great to have that support, and certainly just recognize our staff for their ongoing contributions to United Way and these worthy programs.
Mary, I think that's worthy acknowledgement of those staff members that do that. But we also have residents and citizens of the district that give, and they can also designate their funds for the local United Way that could also end up helping grants back to these local programs.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, moving on to, I think, the last thing on my list, which is presentations at the state level that are done by staff. And first of all, I'd like to recognize Josh Halverson, who recently presented at the Association of Wisconsin School Administrators Associate Principal Conference. And he presented on practical technology applications, This session focused on web and app tools that allow you to create efficiency through the use of Google Forms, flipped class staff meetings, and monitor school climate through social media. So certainly important work that Josh is an expert in the area of technology, and he was able to share his talents with others in Wisconsin. And lastly, I'd like to recognize our school counselors. It was National School Counseling Week last week, and we have our elementary counseling team presenting at the Wisconsin School Counselor Association Conference this month, and they will present on Stop, Walk, Talk, which teaches proactive strategies to deal with disrespectful and bullying behavior. And then Kelly Curtis, who is the president of this organization this year, she will present on hot topics in school counseling and data basics for school counselors. Once again, it's great to see our staff recognized in the state and sharing their talents with their colleagues. And that's my report.
Excellent. Any questions on the report then from the superintendent? If not, then we move on to other reports, and I guess first up, it's back to Mary to report on the high school Learning for the Future as well as our STEM and healthcare academies. And I think we have some people who are helping, including Principal Schumacher and others, so I'll let her introduce them, and Mary, why don't you take it away.
Let's get started. So high school Learning for the Future is part of the Strategic District Vision, HSD 2025. And it is one of those very important initiatives that goes across the high school. It is a multi-year initiative. It includes advisories, project-based learning, freshman academies, and career academies. So Principal Peg Shoemaker and her team, and Peg, I'll let you introduce your team as well, are going to talk about the high school Learning of the Future, our career academies, and an update where we are today.
Good evening. I'm thrilled to be able to report to you after about 6 months of our current STEM Plus and Healthcare Academies, and give you a report specifically on that portion of high school Learning for the Future and where we've been able to move it. This is definitely organic leadership in the sense that we have strong teaching teams that are leading the charge on this, as well as our academy leads, Lisa Watkins and Lynette Beinlich. So we will share some of the highlights, some of the places that we've moved. We also have 4 students here tonight who have a presentation for you, and then we'll close with questions and next steps. So one of the pieces that we really had to look at in our academy teams was how do we train our teachers. And so this summer we actually met with a group of STEM Plus teachers, and these are teachers that are English, science, mathematics, right now, and some career tech ed as well. And so we looked at how do we do an integrated lesson design that actually integrates the components of English, math, science with a STEM or a healthcare perspective. And so one of the first things we did is we did an adult field trip, and we went to the 3M Innovation Center, which was absolutely fascinating. It's pretty much top secret to get into the 3M Innovation Center, like the thumbprints and everything to get in the doors. And but we heard the teachers had an opportunity to actually hear from engineers and people in the field of STEM in what they're looking for in terms of employees, as well as recent college graduates who just come to join them via internship. And it was that repeated message over and over about the importance of being able to think critically, of being able to communicate your idea and sell your idea, and to collaborate and work together. That was repeated over and over and over. And we actually got to see the fruition of some of the 3M interventions and how those actually took place via those three elements that I just described. And so that was really imperative to show teachers that although we're talking content, we're really talking skills. And it's the skills necessary to be able to contribute, be productive as we move into the century. We also went into Hudson Hospital and enjoyed a great partnership with them, as well as Catalyst. So those were the adult components. These teachers have weekly common planning time, so they have actually time together that they can meet and collaborate on how they're going to do this integration. In addition, we had two just remarkable biology teachers, and they're right here, who have really become sort of the heart and soul of the academies. Don't look if you have a weak heart. They actually went for 10 days and to South Carolina and studied the Project Lead the Way biomedical design of delivering our STEM and healthcare academies. And so they've already begun to implement those pieces, and next year we'll have a full implementation of this particular curriculum into the STEM and STEM and healthcare biomedical. So also, I've talked to you a little bit about this before, but we have at this point received $60,000 from 3M that's supported both our engineering and our science. We just met, Lynette and I met last week with 3M, their foundations, and we'll be submitting additional grants. And we received a little bit over $5,000 from the Ed Foundation, which is actually utilized to also support our update and support our science curriculums. And then just received a check over $5,000. It's a little bit over $5,000 from Bosch that will actually be used to partially fund our forensic science course. So we have streamlined a lot in order to support the academies, not only what Mary always, her mantra, which is the high support, high expectations, high accountability. And we definitely have had the support not only from outside community, but from all of you. So couldn't have done it without that. Also want to look a little bit at some of the coursework that's ahead of us that is also continuing to support our academies. We have the new forensic science. If you've ever watched CSI, you get the idea of what that's about. We have a full year anatomy and physiology course, which will also be transcripted by WITC. It's not an AP course, but it's definitely for students that are interested in a 4-year medical route. We have a vet science course that is offered through our agricultural science program, we are definitely expanding. Not all kids are 4-year bound, are chemistry or physics. We want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all of our learners. And so this is an elective course that students that are really interested in that vet science route can go. And then finally, we have an elective called Introduction to Healthcare Occupations, and that's a CTE elective that sort of gets students into a little bit about current healthcare fields and such. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lynette. She's going to talk to you about what we've done in terms of recruiting.
The freshmen are invited to a healthcare discovery day where they can go to Hudson Hospital or to Catalyst, and they learn hands-on how to be a a person in different careers. So they had a chance to go to Hudson Hospital or to Catalyst for the healthcare part of it. As far as STEM, recruiting our students in 9th grade and actually 6th through 12th grade, they're invited on Thursday night to the middle school for the Women in STEM event. So we've got a lot of women from different industry around the area, and there are also representatives from universities that will be there also. So the young women will be able to come and do some hands-on learning and see what the industry women have to offer. So that's this Thursday night from 5 to 8 at the middle school. So a couple of the things that we've done with the students to have them actually do hands-on is the University of Minnesota offers a program called Scrubs, Gloves, and Microscopes. So we gave our students in the Healthcare Academy the option to sign up for any of these sessions. They have 11 sessions throughout the school year. So they signed up themselves, and then I transport them from Hudson over to the U. It's a 3-hour session, and they had the opportunity to be a part of the pharmacy program. They can learn about being in the pharmacy program, the veterinarian program, dentistry, physical therapy. We've got one in March for pediatrics, and these young women right here, they're part of the pharmacy program, so they got to make a concoction, so it was a hands-on experience for them, so they got to learn about the program, and it's just a really, really great program that the kids have been able to be a part of. And medical boot camp, we have a Hudson High School graduate, Katie Koenig-Schauen, and she graduated from medical school last year and was one of our speakers for our speaker series and said, anything that you need from me, just let me know. So she said, I would love to come back and teach the kids something that would be helpful to them. She came back and had a medical boot camp. So we got chicken breasts, we had suture kits donated from Hudson Hospital, and she showed the kids how to sew up chicken breasts and banana peels. So, and she's, she said that the students in their 3rd year of medical school is when they learn to suture, and we're showing our sophomores at Hudson High School. So it was a great program, and she's offered to come back and do other things. And we also took students to 3M Cottage Grove. They had a chance to talk to professionals down there. As far as they could pick a lot of different careers to listen to, accounting, to engineering, to security. So there was a supply chain, so the students had a chance to talk to the professionals in those areas. And we also took some of our we took our STEM students to Hudson Hospital. We had an oncology panel there for them. We had a surgeon and an oncologist. We had a group of employees that lead a patient from diagnosis to survivorship, and they led our students in discussion on what that looked like. And we also had a survivor who was actually a Hudson High School graduate that talked to our students also. So we had a chance to get our students out to Hudson Hospital.
All right, so along with some of these kind of field experiences that we've been able to provide for our students thus far, the students, we really are kind of relying on them. As Peg said, it's kind of organic, and we're learning as we're going, so we appreciate all the feedback that we get from the students. So kind of the 2 main things is we have Academy ambassadors, so we have 5 students from each academy that we meet with every Tuesday morning. They come in right off the bus or come in right from driving to school now that they're all getting their driver's licenses, and we just talk about different things, setting up and doing, organizing fundraisers, as well as talking to them about what's going well, what's not going well, what's some of the feedback that you're getting from your other cohort members. And then also we have cohort meetings once a month with the whole group, where we just have general discussions, what's upcoming for them, what are some different opportunities for career-based learning hours or different experiences that we're going to be providing, as well as just, again, kind of an opportunity for them to provide us with some feedback as well. So as I was saying, our ambassadors, this past winter in December, they raised approximately $550-ish for Little Blessings for the Western Wisconsin Cancer Center. So these are just small donations for people that are experiencing, or are family members experiencing some sort of cancer treatment. So it's something as little as having someone come in and clean their house versus giving them a gas card or a grocery card or things like that. So our students sold cookies both home-baked and purchased just goods to after and before the choir concerts in December. So they raised some money for that, and then this is our ambassadors presenting the check to Maggie Fugly, who is the nurse navigator for that program. Some of the soft skills, some examples that, we always are talking about: the collaboration, communication, critical thinking. So some things that you kind of see in these pictures is students with their Chromebooks. I think it's probably safe to say they use them pretty much almost on a daily basis to collaborate with each other via Google Docs and things of that sort. They're doing hands-on experiences quite frequently, especially in their biology classes. This past, right before winter break, students in both academies had their kind of big integration project that they had to do. So healthcare students talked about or did a project kind of that centered around personal health and just different things, like how different things in your life can affect your just different aspects of life. And they kind of read a book that went along with that, kind of dealing with homelessness and how that can affect you. And then the STEM Plus students did a project centered around cancer and cancer treatment. So they got up in front of the rest of their cohort members, teachers, faculty, some parents showed up, and they had to present their projects, and you're gonna hear one of those in just a minute here. And then the critical thinking part, this is kind of a sneak peek into what our 2 biology teachers are doing with the biomedical program is for this semester, and this will be kind of the curriculum for next year, is the biology students are learning your classic biology through investigating a crime scene and figuring out how an individual died. So it's very project-based learning-esque. The students have to do a lot of inquiry and investigation on their own, lots of hands-on stuff. They get to analyze stomach contents and all of that fun stuff. So they're just learning your classic biology in a different way, and through that they're getting those critical thinking skills. Some numbers here, just to kind of give you an idea of where we're at. So as of right now, we're at 53 healthcare students and 67 STEM Plus students. And for next year, our incoming 10th graders, we have 70 in healthcare and 71 in STEM Plus. And then the 11th grade, currently, we're sitting at about 55 in healthcare and 58 in STEM Plus as well.
Okay, so I want to tee up for you what you're about to see, and there was really only one way of explaining it to you, and that was for you to hear from students themselves. So these 10th graders that are going to present to you were basically designed a project under the leadership of the team of English teacher Sheila Fulop, science teacher Erin Meyer Williamson, and math teacher Adam Cowles. So this is an integrated approach, and you're going to see pieces of all of those subjects tied into one project. These students are absolute experts on a form of cancer, and I'm going to have them come up right now. And they are ready to go. We met with them yesterday, and I said you need to cut your presentation in half. And so these students are amazing. These are some of Hudson High School's finest, and you will see firsthand the kind of depth that they've experienced.
I guess. All right. So as Ms. Shoemaker said, our project was focused on a specific type of cancer, and as a group, we had prostate cancer. And I guess we'll introduce ourselves. I'm Parker Holum.
Before we get into content, could you give us your names, please?
Yeah, that's what I was doing. All right. Parker Holum.
Seth Haroldson.
Maddie Bronner.
Emma Sethi.
And our driving question was, how can we inform the public about a specific type of cancer and how the treatments and and how their life is affected from treatment through diagnosis, from diagnosis through treatment until when they are finally cancer-free.
Okay. So for our first slide, we had to talk about the definition of prostate cancer, and that is a cancer in the tissue of the prostate, which is normally found in men over 50. It's quite rare to have this type of cancer under that age. And then moving on, we have a picture of both of the cells. On the left, it is a picture of the healthy type of cells that you would find in the prostate. And then on the right, it would be the cancerous kind, which you can see the infection in the cytoplasm and the difference in the nuclei.
Okay, for the math part, we had to find the doubling time. So the low end for the PSA, which is the prostate-specific antigen, and that's found, it's a protein in the prostate, and it's found by a blood test. The doubling time was 18.4 months. And on the high end, the doubling time was 32 months. And our average tumor length was 13.4 millimeters. And we had to do an exponential growth equation. That was y equals 13.4 millimeters times 2 to the power of months divided by 25.2. And our treatment equation was with a 25% reduction. So that was y equals 13.4 millimeters times 0.25 to the power of months. And then the table represents the exponential growth. So then we have graphs for the exponential growth rate of the tumor. So at 1 month, it starts at 13.77 millimeters. And then by 3 years, it goes up to 36.07 millimeters. And then with the treated prostate cancer tumor, the 25% reduction rate, it starts at 13.4 millimeters, and by 1 year, it'll go to 0.42 millimeters.
So for the ages of people that get it, out of the 233,000 people in the U.S., about 36.3% of those people are between the age of 65 and 74. And as you can see, there's no one under the age of 20 that gets it. And as you go up into the ages, it's a lot more common.
All right, so there's 2 common ways to diagnose prostate cancer. The first one is a digital rectal examination, where you'll go and see your doctor for your monthly or yearly checkup, and he'll take a lubricated glove and reach into the rectum and feel the backside of the prostate. And if you feel something abnormal, he'll actually go into the prostate biopsy, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But unfortunately, with this method, you can only feel one side of the prostate, so if it's on the other side, you don't know if it's there. The other test is the prostate-specific antigen test, and prostate-specific antigen is released by the prostate, normally like a body function, but if there is prostate cancer, it may be released at a faster rate. It's a blood test. They take your blood and they'll look at it, and if there's a abnormal amount of the prostate-specific antigen, then you're going for your biopsy. Prostate biopsy is a needle. They'll actually scrape the side of the prostate and look at it under a microscope, and then that's Gleason scores. And all of these will have not much pain. It'll be painful when you're doing the test, but not lasting. After a biopsy, they'll look at the cells under a microscope and determine the Gleason score. A higher Gleason score is worse cancer. As you can see in the picture, it starts out very small, very uniform, and as it gets worse, it just falls apart, looks worse. There are different stages of cancer, and for prostate cancer, stage 1 is not often found. If it is, it's usually incidentally during surgery for other things, and it cannot be felt or seen, which is why it's not usually found. Stage 2A is when the cancer is found in 1/2 of the lobe of the prostate. This is where prostate cancer is most often found, and if it's found in one of these stages, it's not usually bad.
Stage 2B is when the cancer is found on both sides of the prostate, or when it has a Gleason score of 8 or higher. And stage 3 is when the cancer has spread past the prostate into the seminal glands. And stage 4 cancer, it has spread through the prostate into the nearby tissue, organs, or other bones. And from this chart, you can see that in 1975, there was relatively low cases. And over the years, when screening became more prevalent, the cases became higher, and they peaked out, and then they have begun to go back down as treatments have advanced, and the deaths have also began to decrease as treatments have advanced.
Okay, so for future treatment options, we have a couple listed up above, which may turn into modifying contaminated genes, where they will go in, find the contaminated gene, and switch up the outline of it so it won't be as cancerous. Certain vaccines are being made so that it's easier to go through the process and not have cancer. There's the RFA, which is a type of injection which goes into the bone marrow in case the cancer has spread off further from just the prostate. A type of hormone therapy, and then there's a video which explains the idea of estrogen patches, which change up the amount of hormones which control the prostate and the cancer cell continuation.
So this is advanced stage prostate cancer. Usually prostate cancer, when found, is an early stage and it's easily curable. But on occasion, they'll find it in a late stage where it's spread outside of the prostate and into other body parts. And in that situation, the best thing that they can do is contain it and try to keep you alive for 2 or 3 years before it starts getting worse. And after 4 years, there's a 38% chance of survival, which isn't good. It's not horrible, but after that, you're most likely to pass away.
Some prevention for prostate cancer would include decreasing the amount of vitamin E taken in, and also decreasing amount of dairy and calcium, and also the maintaining of a healthy weight and a healthy exercise schedule can not only help prostate cancer but general cancers.
So we said that advanced stage prostate cancer after 4 years has a 38% chance of survival, but early stage prostate cancer has almost a 100% chance of survival, so almost everyone lives through it. And all stages combined have a 99% chance of survival, which shows that most of it is early stage and caught early enough to be treated. And there are 2.5 million people who were diagnosed at one point with prostate cancer who are still alive and survived their treatments.
Okay, so if you want to get involved or learn more information, you can go to the University of Minnesota, where they have the Institute for Prostate and Urologic Cancers. They also have the American Cancer Society and the Minnesota Prostate Cancer Coalition. And then in the month of November, fun thing for guys to do, they can grow mustaches to show their support for men's health awareness, and that's called Movember.
So part of our presentation and the project was to try to inform the public, get the word out about, to inform them about the cancer. And we created a flyer and put it in places around town, Herberts and Gerberts or Snap Fitness, for example. And the flyer kind of goes over risk factors for prostate cancer, the symptoms of prostate cancer, and what it is in general, and what you can do to help, which Emma just went over. And I have that flyer, and I can pass it out to you guys if you would like to take a look, or tell you what's up.
Okay, so what we'd like to do is switch to the next slide and talk a little bit about next steps and where we're moving with the academy. We're actually right now forming our new 11th grade academy, so these students will actually move up and expand out into the 11th grade curricular areas. We also are in contact and in partnership with additional Bosch and Anderson Windows, who Sandy and I have made several contacts, and they're eager to support us as well as we move forward in both STEM and healthcare. And then these students will then actually be able to, as 11th graders, begin to do their job shadowing. So we're in the process of arranging those experiences for them. At this point, we would take any questions that you might have or comments. But first of all, I'd like to say, can you imagine these kids when they're seniors?
Board members, comments or questions?
Mr. President?
Yes, Bruce.
So, I don't know who wants to start, but I'm curious, when you first started to where you're at today, Are you more motivated? Do you kind of have a clear vision of what you want to do when you get to the next stage, or what that next stage might be?
Yes, the STEM program has helped to sort of make us more aware of what careers are involved and what you have to learn to get to that career. So I think that made me more aware of what I want to do and how I want to get there.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. So this project actually helped me a lot because before this year I was just not really sure what I wanted to do. I thought I might want to be an engineer of some kind. But after learning about the cancer and that kind of thing, I got interested in biomedical engineering possibly, or even going into pre-med in college.
I definitely think that this academy has helped me. I'm definitely able to focus more on the type of subject related to the STEM Plus Academy, which will definitely help me in college. Since I really want to become a math major, now I have an academy that I can follow through with and focus on my math. So I think this is definitely helping.
Yeah, I think it's helping too, because I wasn't really sure of what I wanted to do, but with like the bio, now we have the biomedical science, and I never really thought of that as a job. So now I learned more about that, and that's interesting.
Right. Thanks. It's pretty special when you can figure out what your passion is a little bit earlier on. Yeah. Yeah. It certainly fuels the fire. So very impressive. Thank you for having the courage to come up here tonight and share with us what you guys found. Thank you.
Mr. President?
Yes, Len?
Great job, you guys. That was amazing. Really, really an amazing job. I have a question for you on if there's things that you can articulate that we can use to improve the program, or the experience that students coming behind you, as you guys are the trailblazers kind of going through and helping refine what this organic process looks like. Is there input that you have on how we can improve things? Not to put you on the spot. If you can't think of anything, you can always circle back with Mrs. Shoemaker too, but.
So I don't know if this is possible or not, but with like the academies, it's about getting work related to a job field you might be interested in. So a nice thing would be to have more hands-on and less just taking notes in classes, which the STEM classes are kind of getting towards that, but if more classes could get towards that, possibly.
Mr. President, again, I'd like to echo a great job and congratulations on what you're learning. I'm curious to know what motivated you to get involved in this particular academy. I mean, had you had some interest in the past of math or science, or is this what, had a friend that talked you into it, or?
Did your parents make you?
Well, my dad, he does that, so he kind of like pushed me toward it, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I decided just to try it out. It's good.
Ever since I've been in 6th grade, I've been like thinking of becoming an engineer. But then as I realized about the STEM Plus Academy, I realized that maybe math would be a fun thing to try, or maybe mechanics. So then coming together with this entire academy and seeing that I could become an engineer in mechanics or a biostatistician or any kind of technology kind of thing, it seems like it's definitely helped narrow down the kind of jobs that may be there for the future. But I think I got into this academy definitely because of the engineering process, and then now it's switched into many different other types of STEM-related aspects.
So going to high school, as I said, I was kind of interested in being an engineer, so I took the first course in Project Lead the Way, Introduction to Engineering and Design, and I liked that class, so I decided that I might enjoy the STEM Academy if it was going to be similar to that.
I also had an interest in engineering going into high school, and I also took the introduction course, and so I decided to try the STEM Academy to see where it would go to. So just as a follow-up, I'm assuming that your involvement now has only kind of strengthened your interest in this? And you don't have to, you can make an honest response to this if you'd like. I mean, if you found that it's not something that you want to continue on, that's fine too. You certainly understand that you have that availability as well. So, but I'm assuming that this is kind of continued to pique your interest as well. So, and I don't need an answer from all four of you, but
One of the things, just to follow up, is that we really believe even if students don't choose an engineering field or don't choose a healthcare field, that they've had experiences that are really rich and into the depth part of learning, and so into the inquiry part of learning. So that's totally okay if they don't go that way. We don't consider that to be any sort of a failure or mark on their time. What they're getting is really high quality inquiry based approach.
yeah, just to follow up to that, I mean, just the aspect of critical thinking, collaboration, is certainly something that's applied at any discipline or every discipline in terms of careers across the board. So,
Yeah, and I would add that all four of you, I think, would make good teachers as well. So keep that in mind, because you put on a good program here and educated us on a subject, did an excellent job, and kind of gets us excited to see these kind of programs working. And hopefully you're looking forward to the next year when you're going to be doing some job shadowing experience and so forth. So,
Mr. President?
yes.
You know, I would congratulate our students for challenging themselves, and certainly you're demonstrating what we just heard of from our educational leaders about collaboration, critical thinking, and communication in your presentation and how you got here. So again, congratulations for challenging yourself. Keep doing it. And we can't wait to see what happens your junior year, your senior year, and beyond, because we're preparing you for that beyond as you enter the world leaving Hudson High School. I also would like to recognize our leaders at Hudson High School, the administration, our teachers. You saw a few of them up here with Peg, Lisa, and Lynette. And then we have Aaron and Jamie, and then there would be a whole host of other teacher leaders who are changing how they are delivering teaching and learning, and they are learning in the process with their students as they develop this new way of learning. It's quite exciting at the high school, and it's really about what's best for our students.
Mr. President?
I saw Tom pushing
I
first.
just wanted just to say thanks also to the community as a whole, the business community, Hudson Hospital, 3M, John Knutson's place, I forgot the name
Catalyst.
of it. Thank you, Catalyst, for their participation in this as well. I think it's a good demonstration of a community collaboration, so it's very important that we have their partnership too.
Bruce?
Thanks. Mr. Shoemaker, the 70 and 71 students that are enrolled for next year, I don't think I heard the breakdown of male and female, but do we get pretty good participation on? I know it's a goal of ours to try and get as much as we can, diversity.
We had a couple of students that were, and are still kind of maybe debating on if they want to switch from, they applied for STEM Plus, and kind of their indication is they maybe want to do something more medical, so just trying to debate on which one they want to do. So that's where those final numbers aren't exactly tallied, but I can tell you that the number of girls in the STEM program increased, and I think by at least 20%.
Wow,
from
awesome.
what we've got this year.
That's good.
And so that was great. Healthcare is about the same as it was this year, maybe slightly less than that. So that will obviously be a goal then for the following years to increase the number of males in the healthcare academy.
Great. Thank you.
And one last question for the students. How many here are anticipating taking AP courses next year? All right. That's good. That's good. I know that you got a couple years left before you graduate, but we've got several offerings that are in these academies, so that's great. All right. Any other questions? Well, thank you, and let's give them a round of applause. All right. Well, moving on with the reports, I guess we have next, community engagement process, and my name happens to be next to it, but we've got a group of 8 people involved, and we have 3 of them up here now, and 4 that are hopefully joining us as I speak. You can come forward if you're one of our community process stewards. I just got to change the order of my slides here. So we get up to, there we go. So this first slide is the introduction to, if you recall, at our last regular meeting is when we approved kind of the process. We had a special meeting actually to set forward goals and objectives. We have hired Ann Carroll as our facilitator and expert in public engagement. So want to emphasize again that this is a process. So our title is Planning for the Next Generation HSD's 2040 Learning Environment. And I guess I have the first part, and then Joel Skinner will take the second half. But this overview, in the community engagement purpose is to determine how to best meet the educational facility needs of the next generation of Hudson School District students. And we figured that a generation is 25 years, so that's why you saw the year earlier of 2040. We're looking out over this next generation, how can we best meet those needs? And so this is a long-term perspective that will also help us inform and influence our short and midterm educational and facility decisions. These community engagement core values that are on the board now or up on the screen are taken directly from the IAP2 website, and as Ann Carroll talked about at our special meeting when we first started this process, was that these core values are kind of basic and we have to adopt them. The board did adopt these universally, and so it's basically the public participation is based on beliefs and premises that we're going to be involving the public, and they have a right to be involved, and that we promise the public their contribution will influence the decision. And as you see, some of these others is that we're going to promote sustainable decisions by recognizing and communicating the needs and interests of all participants, including the decision makers, and that we seek out and facilitate the involvement of these people who are potentially affected by or interested in the decision. This is kind of a very active process where we're seeking out and facilitating as opposed to being very passive, which I would say was more of our approach probably the last time around. This is a whole new approach where we're seeking input even on how we design the participation. So then the level of community engagement. We have our level of engagement on the spectrum is involved. It's kind of in the middle. The goal in this public participation is to work directly with the public throughout the process to ensure that public concerns and aspirations are consistently understood and considered. And our promise to the public with this level of engagement is that we're going to work with the public to ensure that their concerns and aspirations are directly reflected in the alternatives developed and provide feedback on how public input influenced the decision. The process steward team, which is the name for our group of 8 individuals. It's a combination of the community, the board, and the staff, and we're working with our consultant. And we are, it says they will, but we are establishing, supporting, and monitoring the community engagement process and help maintain the integrity of the process. Coordinating and helping lead the engagement effort, including service as process ambassadors and educators. We're ensuring that the process helps educate stakeholders, and we're help build the community trust in the process and in our district, and include clarifying that there is no predefined end. You notice that there's a common word in all 4 of those subpoints, and it's process. This is a process that the team has been working on and will continue to work on. I think we used the word organic earlier to talk about other concepts. This is definitely just that. This is a developing process, but we are not ultimately deciding this. I've had people in the community come up and say, you know, are these the people who are going to be deciding what the next option is going to be for the school district? Certainly not directly, but we are setting up the process for the community's involvement. This is going to be a public process and a public decision ultimately. So to introduce our team, the members were selected by the board based on their community connections, relationships, and willingness to serve as process leaders and ambassadors. And that second part, willingness to serve, we didn't force anyone to be up here with us, but we very much appreciate their willingness to do this because it is a huge time commitment. The team has already been meeting, well, a minimum of 1 to 2 times a week, often for 3 hours or more at a time. And that's not counting the other times where we're working on documents through Google Docs and we're developing data and so forth. Our 4 community members are up here on the stage with us. We have Paul Bourget, Jill Burchell, Joel Skinner, and Tom Van Pelt. And with that, these 4 group, I think it's already proved to be a great group, lots of input. I would say that they have more input than the 2 board members that are on this team, a lot more input, and but great perspectives. We have different skill sets. Paul is currently consultant, has involvement in mediations, but has also worked with public process in government. Joe Burchell has experience in business, private sector, and finance. Joel Skinner is an attorney, a non-litigation attorney, I would add, so he's not a direct competitor for me. But Joel has intellectual property, and again, with that said, it's a lot about preventing problems down the road. And then Tom Van Pelt is president of Citizen State Bank, and so brings a banking and finance background. So we appreciate the skill sets that they're bringing to this group. The 2 staff, Dave Grambo and Tracy Habish-Aline. Tracy, of course, our communications person. Dave having experience as a teacher, principal, and current administrator in the district. So there's often times where we need to pull data from the district, and so that's where they become invaluable. Also, resources where we can search out, because this is, again, it's just at the start of the process. And of course, the 2 board members, myself and Bruce Hanson. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joel Skinner, who's going to talk about the community engagement overview.
Thanks, Jamie. We're going to talk about the process, its objectives, and its stages. And I think we have this first slide shows the 3 objectives of the engagement process: trust and transparency, inclusion, and consensus. We've been working, as Jamie said, over the last couple of weeks, trying to design a process that fits, that serves all of these objectives. First and foremost, it's got to be trustworthy and inspire trust. It has to be transparent, and we'll talk in just a moment about how it's all the meetings are open. And will continue to be, and we invite input from the public at all the stages. The second objective, inclusion, we want everyone to be involved, everyone is invited. We have identified a number of significant stakeholders, and we're going to be reaching out to them, but we invite everyone at all times to this, so it's got to be inclusive. And then the outcome of this process is, and throughout all the stages, we're going to have consensus. So there's going to be consensus in the process as to the data, the needs, the options that we identify as a result of the process, and then the decisions that you'll make.
We want to stress that consensus does not necessarily mean unanimity. So we're shooting for, we'd like to get 70%, but again, it's a consensus is definitely getting a majority behind what we're putting forward here.
Okay. We're going to switch to the stages of the process. This next slide We'll go into the specific stages, or the specifics of the 4 stages, but this is kind of a general things that are going on in each stage. Again, anyone and everyone is welcomed at each stage, encouraged to participate. The stakeholders that we're reaching out to at each stage might vary just a little bit, but everyone's welcome at each stage. And then the bottom of the slide talks about some major techniques that are going to be involved at each stage. Again, very depending on the stage, but they're going to involve small groups, large groups, and online opportunities. I think we're thinking about using SurveyMonkey for that too, or some similar tool to gather input from the public. And then I think the next stage is the specifics, or the next slide rather, is the specifics of stage 1. That's what we're in right now. At the bottom of the slide, you see the estimated timing. Let me step back for just a second. This process is going to run from now until through June. So we're breaking that into stages. And the first stage we anticipate running from mid-February to mid-March. And that stage is to establish baseline data and an understanding of future expectations. So the highlights in the middle there are to first lay the groundwork of the engagement process. We've been working a lot on that over the last 2 weeks. We are going to provide baseline information to the community, also working on that the last 2 weeks. We're going to gather initial input from the community for the next generation 2040 educational needs. Stage 2, which we anticipate running from mid-March to mid-April, is to identify the needs and articulate gaps between what the current facilities and programs are, and to meet those needs. 4 highlights. 1, to present the initial community findings. Secondly, to gather input on the needs. And 3, to begin articulating community-defined needs and priorities. Stage 3. This slide shows stage 3 is developing and evaluating options and scenarios. We anticipate it running from mid-April through May. And then the highlight is really to gather feedback on options and scenarios to meet community-defined needs and to align them with the priorities of the Hudson School District. Next slide is stage 4. It shows that we will be preparing conclusions and recommendations. This is anticipated to run through June. Highlights again are to elaborate on the leading options and to really focus on what the most important of those options are. Second point, we're going to gather stakeholder feedback. Third point is we're going to reach consensus. And then finally, we'll be preparing community-based recommendations to vet and offer to you, the board. Next slide is a little bit of the detail of that first stage, because that's what we've been working on the last couple weeks and be running through, I think, mid-March. The highlights are the purpose is to explain the process, timing, structure, and the stages. I've been talking a little bit about that in the prior slides. Also, earlier I talked about in the summary of stage 1, providing baseline data. That would be data on demographics, changes in our current demographics, changes in demographics, information on what facilities exist, what programs exist in the Hudson School District now. Information, we're trying to gather all data as much as we can on changes in all of that. Third point is to seek input on changes in educational expectations. This is again going out to 2040, the next generation of students. I mentioned earlier that we are seeking to reach out to certain key stakeholder groups, and this is a slide shows a few of them. This is not exclusive, but this is just a kind of the highlights of it. For example, parents, students, and staff of Hudson School District, athletics boosters and activity groups, preschool student parents and early childhood providers, local businesses and employers, people who have an interest in the growth and development of Hudson, such as real estate agents, builders, and developers. We have, as a stakeholder group, recent alumni of Hudson School District in the area. Businesses and entities that are school partners, elementary homeschool families, and elected governmental and municipal officials in Hudson. Highlights of the techniques, again, we have small sessions, large groups, we'll have presentations, and throughout all this we expect to have online tools. And then the result of stage one, again, we expect to wrap up in mid-March. We anticipate posting all of it on the Hudson School District website.
Okay, in a minute, we'll open it up for questions and comments from the board members who haven't been participating in this process. But I just want to highlight now from what Joel has said, as you can see, it's a multiple month process that is going to take some time. And while we have approximate dates for this, there is no deadlines. The process is going to take the time that it takes. It builds on itself. This, I would hope from those folks who just heard what Joel said and watched these slides, see that this is a substantially different process than what we did prior to the last referendum. We are going back literally to ground zero in the sense of we're starting over with what is the baseline information and building from there. The temptation, I know, I've gotten lots of people who have come up to us in the community and said, I've got the solution for secondary space. That's stage 3. And I tell them, good, hold that thought, but we want to get you involved from the beginning. And so how can individuals get involved? First, they can learn about this community engagement effort and follow the progress on the district's website. Again, everything's being posted on there. You can check out a toolkit. Now, this is not a toolkit with hammers and saws and ratchets and so forth, but it is going to be, information. It can be electronic format, it could be paper, but it's basically information and key questions. And then you can host your own community session, whether that's with friends, members of a group, neighbors, or family. I'm actually going to be giving a presentation to the Ecumenical Men's Group on Saturday morning, and this is an example of one of those groups that wasn't necessarily identified as a stakeholder on that list, but just goes to show that that's not an exhaustive list, that this is going to be a very inclusive process. So even whether you're identified in a particular group, you could even do it as an individual. Just go online, review the same information, and offer your own individual perspectives. Stay engaged as the project moves forward. We may lose some people because they lack the patience to, they want to get to stage 3 right away. We hope that they get engaged in stage 1 and keep engaged and not, there's not going to be anything boring about this process. Designing it might have been. We spent hours talking about where the commas should go and, what the paragraph should say and what the graph should show. But it is really, from various perspectives, just trying to find out what's going to be seen as being the most develop trust, be transparent, and not have any kind of predetermined outcome, any kind of slant on any of the information. So we want people to get engaged. If they have questions, they can certainly contact Tracy at the school district. There's a phone number there, which is 715-377-3795. And there's also her email address. Just again, go to the district website, and that's all the information that we've been reviewing is going to be there, the data sets that we've been examining over the last dozens of hours that we've already put into this process. But anybody, the board members, this is the first time I know you guys are hearing this in detail. Questions?
Mr. President, first of all, thanks to everybody for your time and your energy in this. I know it's taking a fair amount of time, a significant amount of time, and I'm sure all of you have lots of other things to do in your lives. I'm struck by the objectives, and I think they're very worthwhile, but I'm wondering about how you measure that, how you measure trust and transparency. Inclusion, I can see. That's probably fairly easy to understand and to quantify. But have you thought about or talked about how you'll know when you've gained trust and transparency or consensus? And I think, Jamie, you said 70%, you hope for 70% consensus. And where's that 70% coming from? Are we going to poll the community, or?
Well, I think, first of all, we don't know yet. We haven't decided, on the outcome, whether there will be a survey at the end. We hope that we don't need a survey, because we hope that we get the kind of participation that, blows away what we've had in the past. But I think you'll see it in the discussion. The consensus is just opening up to the public involvement. And I know, Paul, you've been involved in this process before. And so how do you've seen some concrete examples of how that can be reached short of holding a referendum?
Up or down?
It's kind of counterintuitive.
It's just, I think it's a gut feeling, Tom, on reaching out to the community. And the more people get involved, I think the more that they're existing.
When it's up, it's on. It's kind of counterintuitive.
It's up.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, there you go.
But it's just getting people, our role is really to get people to understand the process, and the more that they actually start to trust it, I think they'll get more engaged, because we are not decision makers. The community really is in the position now to be helping form what the decisions are. So they have to try, our job is to try to get them to understand that.
But basically, it's in the feedback. You see it in the feedback, right? I mean, whether it's live feedback, so when we have meetings that'll be facilitated, or whether it's the written feedback that when these people check out the toolkits and they respond. Once you start seeing consistent themes running through the responses, then you'll know you're getting to the point of consensus.
Frankly, there's resistance right now, because I think there's still a lot of doubt, or trying to understand what this is all about. So there's still a lot of people thinking that we're making these decisions, when in fact that's not the case at all. So as more people understand that, I think the better off we'll all be.
Let me just comment. The other advantage of the process we're suggesting is that the information will be available in a lot of forms. People can go to the library and check out the toolkit, which is going to be a package of some sort. We haven't quite designed whether it's a manila folder or what it might look like, but it'll have data in it, and it'll also have questions that we want their input. So they can do it online, they can go to the library, they can have a standard presentation to their group like Jamie's doing. So I think the variety of approaches to reach people may help deliver more input than there was in the past.
If I could just comment to that, I think, Jamie, you made that statement earlier, and I think it's true. In the past, our approach has been to open it up to everybody and let them come. What I think is different here, and I think is going to be most effective, is that you're proactively reaching out to targeted groups and getting them engaged. And I think that will be very valuable for this process.
Yeah, short of having our municipalities adopt an ordinance forcing people to attend our meetings, I guess, you can lead a person, just like that notion of trust and transparency, emphasize that the word is trustworthy. You can put forward a trustworthy process. whether that person will actually trust, it's going to be up to the individual. People can choose to trust or not to trust. But we're going to have a trustworthy process because it's not being decided in, behind closed doors or in smoke-filled rooms. This is an open process. All of our meetings have been open. In fact, we've had a couple members from the public attend our meetings. Staying awake is another notion, but it's still, it will become more exciting, I think, as we get into the later stages. But people need to stay with us too, that they can't just jump into stage 3 or stage 4. Understand that we're coming at this with all information. And that's the other thing, these data sets that we're going to be coming out with, we don't profess that that's the only information people will be allowed to review. If people have questions, they think that we're missing something, they can point that out. We want to get, and all feedback is going to be reported. It's not going to be edited. It's not going to be filtered. It's just going to be on the district website, I understand it, in kind of an alphabetical format. So, any other questions? Bruce, did I miss anything?
No, I think the other important part is, there's been a lot of people that have been hearing about this for a long time, but now that we're getting to actual stage 1 development, there'll be a lot more activity and engagement within the community, and that's going to be the start of the trusting, if you will, in terms of seeing what the process is and actually getting to be involved, get engaged. So I genuinely, again, feel that there's a lot of people that are excited to see this. Those that, we're starting to talk to, at least are understanding a little bit more about what's going on. I mean, this is new for us too, so it's not like we know exactly what we're doing along the way. I think we're getting great guidance from Ann. I think she's doing a real nice job giving us some structure and putting a lot of trust behind the process. So that's helped us, at least from a guidance perspective. And now we're going to start to be able to get engaged in the community. It's going to be real positive.
Carrie, did you have something?
Yes, Mr. President. I know you said the stakeholder group wasn't an exhaustive list. Has there been any discussion about maybe in these initial stages presentations or explanations at assisted living homes or maybe within churches where people aren't as likely to be able to get out to wherever these other community forums might be?
All takers. I think it's open to anybody. A lot of this, there'll be some serendipity, I suspect, with some of this, but any groups or individuals that anybody can think of, like Jamie's mentioned the Saturday group, that just sprang up within the last couple of days. I suspect over the course of the month, as we go through these different stages, it's going to be a lot of that, a lot of different groups, and certainly those groups would be included. To talk about the stakeholder exercise, mapping exercise, I mean, that list is not exhaustive, what you saw before. There, we captured just about all the different, as best we could, about 30 of us, I think.
Yeah, there was like 33 stakeholder groups that were identified.
Right.
Then there are some groupings of those to try to eliminate the redundancies. But like Paul said, that's going to happen. People are involved in more than one group. But the idea is that this is for the public. It's going to be with the public and by the public as well. It's not going to be just up to the 8 of us to disseminate this information. We're going to do our best to get out there and be proactive, but people also can be interactive with it and be willing to lead groups. That's what we're hoping that these toolkits will allow people who aren't necessarily involved in designing the process still be able to get and discuss the issues and have input. Whether that's the first stage, which is just identifying basic information about the district and what expectations are for learning in this district. And we tried to keep this presentation brief, but because we've spent hours on just that first stage, it will take them hours if they read every source, but we've got links and cross-references to information, probably more information most people are going to be able to read all their own, but that's why we don't want to short shrift anything and allow people to learn at their own pace or to be free to get involved early, though. That's the message from the beginning. Yes.
Mr. President, to Carrie's point, one of the outcomes of the stakeholder mapping group or process is to ensure that underrepresented groups are identified and we do reach out. So in fact, assisted living centers, the plan would be to actually have kits available for checkout along with the presentation small group or large group. So, and other groups as well that are in our community that may not have the means to be involved in an event like this or don't have the time to be involved in an event like this or a meeting like this, that we reach out to them to make sure their voice is heard.
Mr. President?
Yes, Lynn.
So at your stewards meeting on Friday, will you be discussing anything different than we talked about tonight? So if somebody saw this meeting, would they, you have a meeting this Friday, don't you? Isn't it this
Yes,
Friday?
there is a meeting Friday morning,
So is your
8:30.
meeting going to, oh, it's afternoon? Okay, well, will that discussion be,
Yeah, 8:30.
okay.
Bruce has got to read all his email.
Will the substance of that meeting be different than what was presented here tonight? If somebody saw tonight, would they learn something different if they came on Friday, or?
We're just kicking the can further down the road.
Okay.
Getting the briefings together, defining who we're going to start to reach out to, so.
Okay, great.
Yeah, every meeting is a process where we're developing a little bit more and getting closer to, that product. And that's the thing is as soon as we get stage 1 ready to go, we're going to have to start planning for stage 2. But part of the final plans for that are going to depend on what happens in stage 1 as well. So that's why your expectations need to be tempered a little bit. Don't expect that these dates that we've mentioned are going to be hard and fast, and by the end of June we're going to have a solution to this. It could be beyond that. Yes.
And I would also suggest not to wait for us to reach out to individuals either. I would encourage people to reach out, get to the contact information, find a kit, see if there's a way to get engaged. I was getting my absentee vote in today and ran into somebody up in St. Joe, and they're wondering, when are we going to see something out in this community? So we talked about how can we get a group together out there, whether it's at the school or at the church, or even at the town hall out there, just to get some listening sessions going. So there's already some activity and some people wanting to get engaged, and I just encourage people to reach out and not wait for someone to come talk to you about it.
Tom?
Along that line then, Bruce, are those toolkits available now, and where do they pick them up?
They will be available here once we get the final product ready to go. Yep.
Friday's talking about, Friday we're going to cover a lot of what the contents of those toolkits, Tom.
Okay.
We're hoping that they'd be ready, sometime next week, whether that's the early part of next week, middle part, we're not positive, but we're hoping that, again, that's our mid-February kickoff. But we already have enough information to start with these presentations. That's why I'm going to do one there on Saturday morning. Dave's going to have one that will be a little bit different, and we just move forward. But the information is going to be kind of the same. It's just, it might be in less detail for some than others. But everyone who wants more detail will be able to get it because, again, like I said, there's references and links to information. So, all right.
Thank you for your work and your presentation, all of you.
Thank you, team members. Great job.
You're welcome.
All right. So continuing with reports, and the next report has my name next to it as well. Part of that is because it's a report on the State Education Convention, and I was the only board member that went. Now, I was initially delegate alternate, and Lynn was elected the delegate at the last minute. Lynn had a work situation come up, so I was promoted from alternate to delegate. And we went down there with Mary and with Tim Erickson. Basically, the Education Convention is 3 organizations. It's WASB, which is the Wisconsin Association of School Boards, but it's also the Association of School District Administrators, known as WASDA, and then there's WASBO, which is Wisconsin Association of School Board Business Officials, School Business Officials, all right. So there's WASB and there's WASBO, but lots of acronyms. Anyway, the theme for this year's convention was Every Child, Every Day. And there's many good seminars, some very good speakers, but the breakout sessions were particularly helpful. And they're put on by different districts. They seem to be built around, number one, is just what we just talked about, community engagement, building consensus and community engagement. There must have been at least 3 on how to pass a community referendum. And I went to one of those last year, and then a different group was putting on this year because they passed a referendum. But again, it goes back to community engagement. That's what the common theme of all of those, and the notion of being proactive with getting that community engagement. So that was number one. Then the other, second most predominant theme is building successful 21st century school board / superintendent leadership teams, and how you go about doing that. There's different techniques, theories, if you will, that work for different school districts. But one thing that's undeniable is when you have a very strong and effective school board and school superintendent or district administrator, they're called in other areas, when that team is strong, student performance actually goes up. When you lack school board unity and when you lack a cohesive leadership team, it gets reflected in student scores. They've shown this objectively, that when you improve the governance of the district, you improve student performance. So with that, the third theme is this whole notion of 21st century governance for 21st century schools. And I went to that seminar. It was actually put on by 4 pretty high-performing districts, and it's not an accident that that these high-performing school districts are going to policy governance. And it's hard to explain in a few words, but the book that was recommended at this was Good Governance is a Choice. That's the name of the book, Good Governance is a Choice. It's by Dawson and Quinn. And the authors, I think between the two of them, have 65 years of experience on boards. And so they write about, and then plus they've done mega research on this, and they've actually formed what's called the Aspen Institute, I think it's called. Anyway, I got the book, and I've been reading it. I didn't bring it with me to the meeting tonight because it's next to my bedside. That's what I read. It's a small book, so it's very easy to read. That's the kind I need. No, it's a little over 100 pages, and but it's power-packed with ideas. And one of those ideas is that boards need to do some evaluation. Thank you, Mary. Self-evaluation, self-monitoring is the concept that you hear throughout. And so with that, that's one of the things that we're going to do. I think we have a work session set for April 20th. And what I want, I'm hoping that all our board members can attend, even the ones that are going to be retiring. It'll be after your last official regular board meeting, Tom. But it's really, I think, important for us to get an evaluation from ourselves of how we think we're doing as a board, provide it with a baseline, and then what I want to introduce too is, and I guess they used to do this in the district, is do retreats for school boards, but I want the new school board, which we will have at least 2 new members of, that we all work together and we develop goals and a plan. So that we're not just doing this seat of our pants month at a time kind of governance, but rather and be a results-oriented board. If we expect to have a results-oriented staff and students, then we should have that at the board level. So I'm hoping to be able to do a retreat with the new board in May, and at that point, just moving forward. But I think we need to start there, and then we can explore whether or not we can adopt a policy governance type of model for this district. Any questions?
Jamie, I think for the board members that aren't here, you should circulate that recommended reading so that they can come prepared to
I
that.
think what we're going to do is just order the books. It'll be mandatory reading. So, in fact, we'll order a few extras for the new board
Maybe
members.
the candidates would all like to read it as well.
So, good. Any other questions? All right, with that, we'll go with the next report, which is, let's see, financial outlook. Tim, you get the chore of this report, so.
I bring you all the good news, I guess.
Yeah.
This is really to give you an overview of the governor's budget proposal. It is no way an indictment of the governor. It's just to bring you some information. And so, as we look at the governor's proposal right now, on its surface, I want to start with what we're looking at for our current position prior to any changes that might be proposed by the governor. What happens in the aid formula really works against the school district currently. We had a valuation increase of 7.26%, which is almost 3 times more than the state average of 2.6%. So when that happens, the state views you as property taxpayers having more capacity to pay. And so you get aid taken away, and that's what happens here in Hudson. And when we see these large increases in valuation, that works against us in the formula. Combined with a decrease in students, then we wind up kind of magnifying that effect, if you will. So if we look at estimated loss for 2015-16 for state aid, it's $2 million to $2.6 million. Now that's, I say I've got a footnote down below because estimated is just that. It's a very rough projection at this point. We get a July 1 aid estimate from the state, and then we get our final. We don't get a final number until October. So already 4 months into the fiscal year. So we try to do some projections, and this is what we're looking at. This is our best estimate at the time with the information that we've got now. If we move down into the governor's proposal, the first portion is a reduction in a categorical aid. It's a special aid that we get, that all districts get, of $150 per student. And that estimated loss for 15-16, and I'm just looking at an analysis of 15-16. I didn't go into the second year of the biennium at this point, but that's about $800,000 to $850,000 of reduction in state aid. The proposal on the table freezes state equalization aid. That's the biggest portion of our state aid, and those obviously help cover increasing costs that we have. And then the other proposals eliminate private school voucher caps. So currently there's a cap of 1,000 students, and that would lift those caps. And what is being proposed in how to pay for those vouchers to the private schools is those dollars come directly off a K-12 education budget. So that would be a direct reduction in aid.
When you say a direct reduction on these vouchers, they're not tracking necessarily how many vouchers are given out in the Hudson School District and reducing our aid that way. It's just general overall budget for the whole state.
My understanding is, yes, it's a pot of money will be developed. That pot will come off the K-12. So, it would be about impossible for us to figure out what that impact would be to Hudson. In fact, we don't even know what it would be statewide at this point. But that's the proposal on the table. Currently, as you know, our school district is the 4th lowest spending district of K-12 districts in the state. For 14-15, the district levied $12.8 million less than what was allowed under state revenue caps. Most districts levy up to the revenue cap. Hudson does not. And so there are different things that we can do. We've actually, and when I look back over time, budget reductions. We've had reductions in state aid like this previously. The most recent time was 2011, 2012, where we suffered a little bit over 10% reduction in state aid. And we cut, when we looked at reductions, where we wound up is we cut about $3.3 million. We've squeezed our costs down, and that's evidenced by being the 4th lowest spending district in the state. So I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm the bearer of bad news. But that, we'll work through this, and we're working on looking at overall places that we can reduce, so.
Mary, you have something to add?
Tim, I'd like you to talk about the new money that the governor has proposed for property tax credits and how that affects our budget.
Sure. In the, when we look at that second year, actually a second year is a little bit better for us. The categorical aid does get replaced at a little bit higher level. But that's one piece, and that's a pretty small piece of our aid. But what happens in the general aid is the second year there's about $108 million increase. But the increase goes, good news for property taxpayers, goes to property tax credits. It does not go directly to schools. So it's, you know, it's not new money to the school district. What happens is it gets directly back to property taxpayers for property tax relief. There's also a piece in there to increase the school levy tax credit. So a couple of different property tax relief pieces in there. And that's $105.6 million for both years. So you'll see those pieces as talked about as being put into the education budget. But the big making sure you understand that piece is those dollars do not come to districts. They will go directly for property tax relief. So that's an important note to make.
Well, and when it comes to the property valuation increase we saw of 7.26%. So the good news was in the short term because we were able to reduce our mill rate for the current budget year.
Right.
But then you end up feeling it back the very next year because then the state's going to cut you if you become more of a property-rich district, which we did become.
Yeah. When you see those values go up above the averages, it works against us. So.
Right. We like to see growth, but if it's closer to the average, then we're going to see less of the decreases in state aid.
Right.
That we're going to see now. But like you said, this isn't the first time we've seen proposed or potential cuts in state aid.
Yeah,
it's kind of a roller coaster. It goes up one year and it goes down another. But
yeah, actually, it's been more recent. Most years we've had aid go up, but I think it was 11, 12, and then I think it was 9, 10 that we had reductions. Probably the first time ever school districts saw reductions in those aid amounts.
Okay. Any other questions from board members? None? I guess we'll get an update then on how we're doing on the current budget sometime later.
We will. Yep, we'll be giving an update.
But this is kind of the harbinger of potential bad news in the future and kind of lower our expectations. If we just want to stay where we're at, we'd be looking at potential mill rate increases then.
Yep.
Okay. With that, then, we are done with reports, and it's on to citizens' request to speak. We have actually 3, and first up is Pat Saban, and please state your name, where you're from, whether you're a district resident, and then I understand your subject is Diversity Days.
Is this on? You can hear me? Okay. Pat Saban, Hudson, Wisconsin. Tonight, I'm appealing to you not only as members of the school board, but also as parents, grandparents, and people of faith. Are you familiar with Diversity Days, which I believe are only at the high school? Diversity Days.
Excuse me, Pat. I didn't want to interrupt you, but just if you can get a little closer to the microphone, because I'm seeing people are having a hard time hearing you. So.
About.
All right.
Oh wait. Okay. Sorry, I've got a soft voice. Diversity Day was held last Friday. It did not appear in the school calendar. Were the parents notified? What took place on this day? The Diversity Days site states that part of their mission is to provide educational entertainment to our school community. As a parent, are you interested in what this educational entertainment was, or has been in past years, or could be next year? On the surface, as the tip of an iceberg, it appears harmless and unobjectionable, perhaps even constructive. What alarms me are the resources listed on the same page. One is the Mix It Up lunch, which encourages students from pre-K to seniors to identify, question, and cross social boundaries. I encourage all of you to stretch your imaginations to decide what this means. Should the school be encouraging your children to cross social boundaries? The other resource is the Teaching Tolerance website, of which the Mix It Up lunch is part of. From the spring 2015 newsletter, you will find departments that teach identity, diversity, justice, and action. They will answer your children's social justice and multiculturalism questions. Emphasis appears to be on blacks, LGBT individuals, non-Christians, and non-whites. Racism, white privilege, sexual orientation, and social justice are hot topics for books, movies, and other resources. Their website is a teacher's dream. They can find out about professional development, classroom resources, film kits, publications, and perspectives. You can even print one-world posters from the site. Supposedly, their magazine is sent to over 400,000 educators, and over 10,000 schools participate in its program. What is equally or more disturbing is the author of the curriculum, the Southern Poverty Law Center. Considered a far-left legal and activist organization, they are widely known for the designation of hate groups and placing individuals on lists such as extremists. Most recently, Dr. Ben Carson has made this list, and enablers, which include Michelle Bachmann and Judge Napolitano. If you are pro-traditional marriage, pro-legal immigration, pro-American exceptionalism, supporter of most anything right of center or pro-anything that is not politically correct, and are in a position to influence large groups of people, you could end up on their lists. Mike Huckabee made the site headlines for his comments on gay marriage. Also in this week's headlines are famous killers for Christ, such as the Crusades, of course, the Holocaust, and the KKK. They have 939 active hate groups listed on their map, including traditional religious organizations and Bible groups. Other groups include the Catholic Family and Human Rights Institute, the Family Research Council, Sharia Awareness Action Network, Traditional Values Coalition, the American Border Patrol, and the Christian Action Network. You and I have been lumped together with white nationalists, the KKK, black separatists, racist skinheads, and neo-Confederates, and more. I'm asking that you review what goes on with Diversity Day and get parents' input as to what is taught. If parents are not invited, perhaps the entertainment could be recorded so parents and other interested community members could view it. I request that the two resources, Mix It Up Lunch and Teaching Tolerance, be removed from the school's website. What is in these sites and the Southern Poverty Law Center site goes way beyond what the school should be teaching. Parents should be told about these websites so they can discuss them with their children. Hopefully you are more concerned about what the children in the Hudson School District are learning than the building in which they are learning it in. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up, Roy Schoberg. And Roy, again, state your address and your topic, I understand, is the financial impact of the governor's budget proposal.
Yes, thank you. I just heard about the budget. It kind of is breaking news as to a way of balancing the state budget. And so I'm going to request that my fellow citizens, as well as this board, express its disappointment with this governor's budget proposal. And maybe we can reverse it, maybe we can't, but it doesn't have to be this way. You know, we hear a lot of what's going on with public education in Minnesota. And we see leadership that even is looking at different ways of raising funds to maintain our public education, and if not that, improve it. But here, the way of balancing the budget in the state of Wisconsin is to cut funding for public education. And I would think that any new board member candidate would be on the same boat as I am on this, that if you're interested in serving on the school board and promoting public education, you'd have to be extremely disappointed with this measure of budget reduction. You know, our state's economy didn't do very well over the last couple of years. We're still kind of stuck in the Great Recession, I think. We here in St. Croix County, though, enjoy the great engine of Minneapolis-St. Paul, so we haven't really suffered that much. And in fact, you just saw our property values rise when the rest of the state of Wisconsin sunk, or was still low. So because of that, that indirectly is a budget cut to us. But to just go ahead and cut out $150 per student is just, to me, it's a crime. And the reason I think it's really unfair is I remember how many times this local paper gave a lot of print about Governor Walker coming in and promoting jobs, but never was there a word said about what he was really intending, because as soon as that election was done, come December, all of a sudden we hear about a huge budget deficit, and now we know the solution, and the solution is to impact our public schools. So I think it's quite unfair, and I think we can voice our strong displeasure with this budget proposal, and perhaps if we reach out to our good, strong representatives who serve on the joint fiscal policy to reset their priorities again and to put public education ahead of private vouchers. So again, I urge my citizens and this board to vote in favor of public education by contacting our representatives and our governor, because I know I will. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And last, we have Butch Schultz, who wishes to speak about communication.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I just have a challenge. First of all, the committee, the stakeholders, it's a great way to go. I've often felt that if we're going to pass a referendum, we got to take it to the community, and that's what they're doing. One of the challenges I've got for them and everybody is communications in the 21st century. We see, and I'm going to take a shot at lawyers, Jamie.
Oh, that's right.
Joel and Roy. We see lawyers, they like to type things up, you know, and they're long and there's a lot of words. We don't communicate, we don't digest that in 21st century. We need to look at how we communicate. As you were talking about what you're doing, my partner back there, Dick Whitcomb, said there's going to be enough information coming to choke a horse.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's going to happen. So we need to look at ways that we can communicate in the 21st century. For instance, you got one idea, maybe you say 2 pages, bullet points, like you would a presentation. Keep it simple so people can digest it. So just a challenge for the committee.
Thank you. Thank you for your advice. And I guess now is then the board administrator or I guess response to any public comments on non-action items. Does anyone wish to respond to any of the comments that we heard? Mary's nodding, so I guess Mary.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about Diversity Days that Pat Sabin talked about. This has been a tradition at Hudson High School for numerous years. I'm not sure how many, but I know it's been long-standing tradition. And it's an opportunity for students to showcase their talents for their peers. They may do poetry readings, they may perform musically. There are different ways for them to express that. And it's really a way for students to celebrate their strengths and the strengths of both their commonalities and their differences. And so that's the focus at Hudson High School, and it is a very positive focus for all students, each and every student, to be accepted and to share their talents.
Thank you. Anyone else, board members or administrators? Bruce?
Yeah, just a comment to Butch. Thanks for the recommendation, and it's a perfect opportunity for you to get involved and bring forward your suggestions. I think what we want to make sure that we're cautious of is trying to pick out what information needs to be shown to the public and what doesn't need to be shown to the public. So we want to make sure that we're providing all kinds of data sets that the public can make an informed decision on. So the data sets are going to be robust, and there's going to be a lot of detail behind them. But I think the feedback that we're going to get through the communications and the process will help get down to data sets that the community can get behind and feel that there's consensus to make sure that there's not confusion in terms of what we're looking at, what's true, what's not true. It's just making sure that the right data gets brought forward. So great point, but good opportunity to get involved too. Thanks.
I guess I would echo that because actually our facilitator or consultant that we're using for this community engagement process, that, in fact, I think that was her last remark as we were working on the documents, that this is still way too long, the process. She wants to see it shortened up. But in the process of shortening up, we still want to provide those links. So for those people that want to dive into a deeper level of information, have that opportunity. So I think it's a great comment, and it is true that we need to be able to make the point in as few words as possible. That's what I always try to do in my legal writing. But you do have to have your cites and your references ready. If people, want to question it or want to get into further detail, they can. So, all right, with that, we're ready to go into topics for action.
Make one more comment?
Oh, you've got another comment. All right.
I do, and I want to address Roy Schoberg's comment about the budget. Certainly, the administration, and I know the board has grave concerns about the proposal that the governor has brought forth for the biennium budget for 2 years. And that's why Tim Erickson provided the report. It hits Hudson very hard. We don't have all the details about how hard it hits us. And that's very difficult when you're the fourth lowest spending and you've also made significant cuts over the years and take action to make other reductions in health insurance and so forth. So it puts us in a poor position, and yet we do have choices. It's just, it is a very negative situation when we look at funding for public education into the future. So I would also support people in our community, the board. I know the administrators will be communicating, as we have been on numerous topics, to the legislature and to the governor in relationship now to the budget as well. And again, I would encourage everybody around the table to do the same. This is very significant when we think of the impact on students and their education and preparing them to be college and career ready, which is our responsibility as a state and as a school district.
Thank you, Mary. That reminded me, I did want to make one comment too about that. With Tim noted that we're the fourth lowest spending. We're actually more than $2,000 per student less than the state average. The state average is over $12,000 per student. We're less than $10,000. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
So we're substantially under the state average already, and yet we're getting our aid cut because we're seen as a property-rich district. And I think there was another graph that we saw in maybe on the district website, but state aid constitutes 50% of our revenue for this current budget year.
Right, yeah.
And local sources are close to that amount. It's like 49%. Between federal and other, it's 1%.
Yeah, our main sources of funding are state aid and the tax levies, and they float between roughly 50-50 most of the time. So. Right.
Well, when you say most of the time, I happen to know somebody pretty good who ran for state representative back in the mid-90s in this district, and I remember the talk at that time was about whether the state was going to fulfill its commitment of 2/3 funding. They were paying it at that time 2/3, and now we've digressed to 50%. But that's it is what it is, and we just have to do what we can to try and maintain a quality of education we have here in Hudson. So, moving on to topics for action and talk about maintaining quality education. The first topic is secondary space for learning and the short-term plan for the Hudson High School. If you folks recall that we're here at our last meeting, we talked about the short-term plan for the middle school. And we have some high school administrators coming up now to tell us what the plan is. There are some folks who have not been as familiar with the efforts. They've been hearing about the secondary space. We've had 1 or 2 referendums about it in the last 3 years, but the short-term space plan for secondary space has actually been going on for probably 10 years. And I think within this report, Mary will enlighten us on what those efforts were, but they go back all the way to 2007 when we started trying to create more room for students. So, Mary?
Thank you, Mr. President. So I just want to reiterate, this is a short-term plan for space, and it was presented to both the Finance Committee and the Facilities and Grounds Committee, and both committees endorsed the administrative recommendation after they gave us feedback. So we know the board is working with the community. We heard just about from the process stewards this evening on getting to a long-term plan over time to address the needs. But this, again, is a short-term plan, and it's continuation, as Jamie just talked about a plan that's been ongoing. So just to focus on a few historical facts, the current high school facility, and there it is, was a junior high. So it's the former junior high, and it was built in 1963. It's also the former senior high that was built in 1974. And the link that joins those two schools together was built in 1994. So certainly an aging facility. Our enrollment in September that we just saw a few minutes ago at the high school was 1,749 students. And it's projected if we just roll forward students who are in 8th grade and take out the seniors and add in our average incoming 9th graders from St. Pat's and Trinity over the years, it's projected next year to be 1,795 students. The seat capacity, and I emphasize seat capacity at the high school for students, is 1,680 seats, but many of the areas at our school are inadequate for the current population that we have at the high school. It's an aging facility while our academic program advances to prepare students to be college and career ready, and you heard that at one of those programs tonight with our career academies. That we're very proud of that advancing program, even in spite of facilities. So kudos to our staff for making that happen for students. The short-term plan addresses some of the priority needs, and I just want to emphasize that word, some. We're not able to address many of the needs, and our hope is that a long-term plan in the future will do that we're working towards with the community. So the team that has been working on this recommendation is Principal Peg Shoemaker, Associate Principal Kevin Moore, Dave Grambo, Sandy Kovach, Tim Erickson, and then Jim Stayskull as well. We've had specific teachers in various content areas give feedback into the plan, and then Tony Mayer has also looked at the plan in relationship to the areas that he supervises. So go to the next slide. So the short-term plan, as Jamie talked about, at least the most specific part has started in 2007, and it was really designed to create more room for students in the current facility. So in 2007, the district administration moved out of the high school, and the administrative service center was purchased so that we could create more classroom space. In 2013, the ITS services moved out, and they moved into rental space. So again, creating more classroom space. And ongoing, since probably prior to 2007, there have been internal modifications being made every single solitary year to just help make more room for students, increase the efficiency to a very high level, but it also creates problems along the way. And so I've listed a few of them here, as you can see, and I won't go through those, but they have created better traffic flow a little bit, as much as we can. So it's helped to address that. There's been some accommodations for site congestion, but again, it's minor because this is what we can do in a short-term plan. And I just have you remember the pictures you've seen of the very cramped computer lab that we have presented at the board level in our community. And that's an example of splitting classrooms to create additional teaching spaces, but they are very inadequate teaching spaces when we think of what a current and modern program looks for students. And then I do want to point out, we've replaced lunchroom tables with tables with higher density. That really has packed a lot of students into the cafeteria. That's helped to meet the need to some extent. We'll talk about extending that more, but it also creates other problems when students are so close together so many students are close together. And this list goes on. This isn't an exhaustive list in any way, shape, or form. It's only examples of that. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Peg and Kevin to talk about the plan and our recommendations to address some of the priority needs in the short term.
Thank you. So the last time our science labs were updated was in 1998. We have, as you know, our academies, but we also have the DPI is now requiring that we have 3 credits of science instead of 2 credits of science for graduation. So after this current class graduates, the class of 2015, all students will be required to have 3 credits of science. That then taxes and increases the amount of science courses that we need to offer. What has happened is we don't have adequate spaces for the more specialized science that we need. Our labs, many of our classrooms share a lab. Our science courses share a lab. The labs are too small, so they don't meet 21st century industry standards. And the equipment is outdated. And so Kevin is going to talk specifically about some of the spaces that we're looking to update. Again, this is only a partial solution to a complex problem.
Okay, we'll start with the left side of the map. And if you look at the purple shaded area, that's biology update. Right now, those 2 classrooms, 558 and 556, are non-science classrooms, so we're taking over 2 areas and combining that room into 1 room that will be a lab space for the new academy biology, which was described earlier by Peg as Project Lead the Way style curriculum, where the teachers have said students will be in lab about 75% of the time. So to make that accommodation, we need an updated space for that. So that space would have a typical lab classroom where you'd have a classroom portion and a lab portion with lab tables with electricity, sinks with hot water, computers at the lab stations to accommodate the curriculum, and other science equipment specific to that course, such as the probes that they use, the Vernier software to take measurements of different sorts. The blue shaded area is right now 2 classrooms in the science area. One is a biology classroom, one is a chemistry classroom. We'd combine those 2 rooms to make 1 chemistry lab. Right now we have 1 chemistry lab in the whole building for junior level chemistry, junior and senior level chemistry, and it serves 11 sections of chemistry. So if our other chemistry teacher wants to conduct a lab, she's got to share the lab space, and we actually have 1 other chemistry teacher who teaches 1 section who also has to share that lab space. So this is taking 2 classrooms, creating an updated science chemistry classroom that would have lab stations, water again, a fume hood, and other equipment specific to chemistry that allows the students to design and collaborate.
So did you say 11 sections of chemistry are taught then out of 1 lab currently?
Yes.
All right. And chemistry, is that typically taught sophomore level then?
Junior and senior.
Junior and senior, okay.
Then if we move on to the red shaded area, right now those rooms
are a combination of office space style rooms. One is a science biology prep area, one is a collaboration area, one is the ESL classroom. So we take those rooms and create one agricultural science classroom with a lab portion as well. So lab stations, classroom portion, and one advantage of this space is that it has a doorway out to that courtyard where the teacher, Cindy Landers, could utilize that for her horticulture class.
So again, this only partially gets us where we need to be in the area of science. It does not address at all our freshmen. So we still have freshmen with no lab space in science. It only updates our ag science in part. In terms of students will still have to trek through the building to utilize the very small greenhouse on the second story on the east side. And we don't have an animal room or any of the other portions of the ag science that we really want to cultivate with students. It also doesn't meet at all the collaboration spaces that we need. It displaces other teachers, so you can see that in that map that other teachers will have to find different spaces for some of our special ed population. So that it's going to displace some of those and will, in likelihood, increase a couple of teachers being on carts. So it's simply
one other
I'm sorry.
space that you'll see is a green shaded area. That right now is a current physics classroom, and that will just be upgraded to create more of a design space. So lab stations with electric outlets, which right now there's just lab tables along one side of the classroom.
So those are the short-term solutions for some of the science labs. And in addition, we have a couple of other pieces that we want to talk to you about that can perhaps minimize some of the impact of the space issues.
One of the overcrowded spaces is the cafeteria. As it was mentioned that we actually added more seating into to the same size space, so we're fitting more students into it. But a lot of students don't feel comfortable sitting in that congested cafeteria and eating. So some students don't eat lunch. Some students roam the halls during lunch. Some students go back to their classrooms to eat lunch. So to provide a space that has a little more space, to provide a place to eat that has more space, we would like to expand the cafeteria out into that link area and then also into possibly the commons area. But to do that, the commons area, which is on the map, is shaded orange. Right now it has carpeting, which isn't conducive to students eating there. So we would be tiling that area as well, or tiling or some other surface that's more easily cleaned, so that kids could then take their lunch out into the commons area from the cafeteria or eat outside the cafeteria to ease the amount of congestion in the cafeteria. Sure, and then also one of the ideas is to limit the number of student vehicles. We right now have 567 parking spots, and with the sophomore class being the largest in the high school, moving up to junior level, and this year almost selling out of parking spaces, we're going to limit parking next year to juniors and seniors only, and sophomores will not be able to apply for a parking permit.
So the other piece, of course, is the hallway congestion. And this would really require more study for us to really understand if adding a minute to instruction would, to each hour would increase the amount of time that students have passing from one side of the building to the other. The issues that we would have is, number one, we're not sure it would actually address the issue. I did speak with former Principal Laura Love about when they had the 7-minute passing time and the impact, and she really felt it had very little impact in terms of the congestion. We do have additional students in our building from that time, but we're somewhat skeptical that that would really actually help us with having students have more time and less congestion. We would need to study that further. Some of the issues we would have to look at is the loss of instruction time that would mount up over the course of weeks, the impact on busing. Could impact the middle school busing and the elementary busing, and then finally, increasing that time could result in reducing collaboration time. So that would also be something that we would want to look at the cost benefit as well. So at this point, Dave and Sandy are going to cover some of the pieces that we, at this time, Tim is going to cover the cost of the project, and then Sandy and Dave will cover some of the things that we considered but eliminated.
So looking at the estimated cost of what Peg and Kevin just went over, that project cost is estimated to be between $1 million and $1.125 million. And that's an all-in cost. That's all professional fees, all the construction, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, building permits, etc. The cost does not include, and it's important to note, the cost does not include the cost of fire suppression if required. We're not going to know if that's required until we submit some plans to the state for review. There is a possibility. We don't know if we don't think it's a strong possibility, but there's a possibility they may require fire suppression. So that would drive the cost up considerably. Part-time custodial staffing, as Kevin mentioned, taking the commons area and using that for the lunch periods to reduce that overcrowding that's happening right now would require us to staff some custodial time there, and that would just come out of the operating budget.
And why is that, Tim? Is that because it takes longer to wash and wax the tile as opposed to just vacuum carpet?
Well, you're expanding out the students. We're hoping to get about 100 students to eat in the commons area to reduce that. So, but you're expanding your lunch area, so additional cleaning is going to be required. Yeah.
Okay.
Funding for the project overall, it's proposed that the board did commit $5 million of funding for secondary space needs. And it's proposed that we use that estimated project cost of the $1 million to $1.125 million out of those committed funds. And again, that's been run through at Facilities and Grounds and the Finance Committee, and they approved using that. And then that small staffing piece for the custodial staffing is just out of the operating budget, out of the general fund. So that's an overview of the financing for the project.
Okay, and then now we've got explanation of what short-term options were not recommended at this time.
Correct, thank you. So the first one was to put grade levels together within the building. So in essence, to take the school and create kind of a 9th grade area, 10th, 11th, and 12th. And we've done some of that up to this point, especially with the creation of the 9th grade academies. So students, for the most part, in 9th grade are on the west side of the building when it comes to their English class, their science class, and social studies. So that has helped reduce the congestion in the hallway just with that move. But when you look at the overall, both the complexity of our academic offerings as well as just the design of our building when it was built, you have it designed by department. So there's sort of the science area, family, consumer science, art, the music. So if we truly wanted to do that and divide the students up in fourths, we'd have to kind of recreate all those areas. Because currently, when you look at our music department, our courses, art, mathematics is a huge one. There's students in all those classes, grades 9 through 12. So there's multiple grades within those classes, which just makes that very difficult to say that we're going to keep certain grade levels in certain locations within the building.
Right, open campus is another concept that was considered and is not being recommended. Open campus would allow students to leave the high school and have lunch somewhere else off the high school site. Students have 30 minutes for lunch, and that would leave little time for travel of any distance that would allow them to eat lunch and then travel back to the high school in a safe manner, and then to be on time for class as well. Open campus is actually known to increase attendance issues, such as students late for class and truancy issues. River Falls and Menominee both previously had open campus and have moved away from it because of safety concerns. New Richmond, Superior, and Somerset do not have open campus. Implementing this option would increase safety and security issues on campus in order to manage the number of students that would be leaving and then returning to the campus on a daily basis.
One of the other options we considered was, again, increasing that passing time, and Peg did a great job already kind of alluding to the fact that just decreasing or increasing that time doesn't really get at the core of the problem. So for the most part, we really have very few students who are late, that are tardy, and that's the reason. There's usually another reason that's involved. So again, we want further study of that to really find out if that's an issue, if that's something that can be done to resolve that.
The next option that is not being recommended is to modify the schedule to reduce the number of students that are at the school at any one time. There are really three ways that you can do this. One way is to modify the schedule on a daily basis, and that would be a certain portion of the students would be starting and ending their day at a different time than another portion to reduce the amount of time that you have all the students at school at one time. Another way is to modify that schedule throughout the year so a student's start date and end date are different from other students in the school. And the other is to have offerings that are before the beginning of the typical school day or after the typical end of the school day. All of those options are somewhat disruptive on a scale depending on the implementation to the high school program as well as the community after-school jobs, athletics, and so forth. So to have a truly comprehensive high school program where students have all the options, those limit those options considerably.
And then the final one is looking at portable classroom trailers, and we've looked at this option in the past. Some of you have examined that as well, and it's always been kind of put to the side, not as a viable option, mainly because, one, we have just the 43-acre site, so to add more classrooms and use up more of our space is not something we want to do. But more than anything is just the cost of those units, and really the preparation work. There's a huge cost, and then when you're done, they really have no value. There's nothing as far as a resale cost. The other piece, too, is just the security issue. Those portables cannot be attached to the building. So again, you have students traveling back and forth outside, and another security issue.
So looking at the recommendation as a whole, we assume as we hope for a long-term solution in the future that it will take a number of years for us to have space available for students and teachers to use. And so as a result of that, we've identified some key areas. And again, this is only some of the priority needs, but certainly focusing on the area of science where there is so much emphasis, and a lot of emphasis not only statewide, but in the Hudson School curriculum and academic program as well. It does not, as Peg talked about, meet all the needs in science in any way, shape, or form, but it certainly makes it better for our classes and helping teachers that are currently sharing classes to have better facilities. And we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, I know that finance and facilities and grounds have both heard this plan, so that covers, I guess, 6 of our 7 board members. So if there's anyone that has comments after having heard it now before in committee and again tonight, plus we also received a 4-page single-space report as well. So is there anybody else that has questions about this?
Jimmy, I just have one. Peg brought up that we're going to lose collaboration spaces. Those were going to go away. What's the plan for those? I guess I'm not sure I remember what we're going to do to make sure we still have that collaborative time for our educators.
What I was saying is part of the reason when they went from 7 minutes to 5 minutes, it was to allow for the Thursday morning late start. So if we go back to taking the minute, adding another minute, that's going to reduce the amount, could potentially reduce the amount of collaboration space.
Okay, I think I misunderstood. I thought you were saying in the...
The science department's losing some collaboration space, and right now most collaboration happens in a classroom. So that's what they would be losing that space to and collaborate in a classroom, an open classroom.
Okay, basically this plan doesn't add any square footage.
No.
It just upgrades certain regular classrooms into lab space that could be used for the higher level sciences. All right. Did you have a point that you wanted to make? All right.
Mr. President?
Yes, Bruce.
So I wasn't at committee meetings, so I apologize if this was in that 4-page, single space document, but couple of questions. The costs, 1 million to 1.125, where did we come up with that?
That was developed by Elliott Architects. We've been working with an architect on giving us some cost estimates for the project. And so they've looked at and done a walkthrough with Jim Staskell, our coordinator of facilities and grounds. Yeah, and then we also, of course, have, we have to equip these rooms, furnish them. So as a team, we looked at what we would need for furnishings. So that's how we came up with those numbers, Bruce.
Okay, and would that be something that would go out to bid?
Oh, yeah.
To a number of...
Yeah, we would have proposals for the work, yeah. The one thing that's important to note, I think, with this is that if you don't make a decision to move forward, it will be very, very tough to meet the timeline. We're in a very tight timeline already. The construction trades are tough to get right now because construction activity has picked up, and that's a little bit of a concern of ours. So moving quickly is going to be pretty important.
Okay. Consideration brought in, we've talked about utilization of these buildings and the facilities on a go-forward basis. So I'm just curious what sort of thought and foresight went into, next generation learning for the enhancements. And again, I know we're not making sweeping wholesale changes in this building, but I presume we're bringing in some things that are going to allow us to be utilizing them in some capacity going forward.
You mean like sinks in lab rooms?
All right. Yes, James. Yeah.
All right. Okay. It's 21st century stuff.
I think, and that's a great question. And we did do that with some foresight in hoping that we'll be able to reuse a lot of the space. But for us, not knowing what the final plan is for the high school, but there are certain areas that, depending on the programming, certainly could be utilized. But then again, it's possible that if there's a major wholesale change there, they won't be able to be reused.
Yeah, understand. So last question, I guess. So one of the other areas that we've talked about is like AP biology. And is this going to allow us to offer AP biology or not?
It makes it more possible.
Okay. I mean, because I think that would be something we want to take into consideration if we're going to be spending this kind of money. And AP biology is something we say we offer, or at least it's on so I just want to make sure that we're at least taking that into consideration to see if we could get that included, because it seems like an important course that with the academies coming on board, it would be real important. So just like to see some more feedback there. I mean, I support getting some plans in place, and I think that these are some good suggestions. I appreciate the research that was done. I know there's been a lot of discussion around, open campus for cafeteria and lunch hours, so appreciate the feedback that you provided there and some of the research that you've done. It's good to call back to Laura and see, what some of the things we've done in the past, so we can learn from that. So, I wish we had a different option right now, but I think that, we have to get some of these enhancements made to make sure that we're addressing some of the short-term problems that we're faced with. So appreciate the research, and if we could just get some more feedback or at least thought into that AP biology, it'd be great.
Tom, do you have a comment?
My question or comment kind of goes along with Bruce's point. Whenever you do something like this, you've got X amount of space. You improve it, and as a result, you diminish it. And my question is, in your, from your educational perspectives, have the improvements
outweighed the the diminishments. I mean, I think you folks are in the best position to answer that and than we are, but that would be my concern, is that we're not just changing the seats around and we haven't gained anything. So.
Right. We studied this for a long time. We met multiple times with Sandy and Dave, met with teachers. Generally, our special ed spaces are smaller in terms of they're not full-size classrooms. And so we feel we'll be able to kind of modify with some of the other adjustments that we're making in terms of for instance, moving a teacher out of the ag science area opens up that classroom. And so we are in the process of looking at what the enrollment is for those special ed classrooms and making the best decision based on that. We really reached a kind of a upper science saturation point where it was, you know, the lack of ability for teachers to meet every day in a lab and to set up labs, like Kevin said, sometimes up to 75% of the time. It was simply impossible, so teachers were having to completely modify what they were doing in science. And obviously, science has a lot of bang for the buck for our students. And so we feel that we can make do in some of the other spaces in order to make this happen.
It becomes a matter of priorities, I imagine, in a sense. And I appreciate all the hard work that's gone into this. This isn't an easy task for any of you. And I do believe, I think I asked this question at the Facilities Committee, that the intention or the hope is that this will carry us for 3 years or something like that. That's the estimation. So.
Right, absolutely.
As I understand it, one of the main drivers for this is that the increased requirement for 3 years of science instead of 2.
Correct.
And so this makes sense to then make science the #1 priority. My question is, understand you're addressing biology, chemistry, physics, ag science. What about freshman science? Why is that not being addressed?
Well, we would need to expand the freshman science spaces in order to do that.
So the freshmen are in small classrooms, and so there just isn't we need the number of classrooms that we have, and there isn't another space that we can expand into. So we're limited. And again, it's really hitting some top priority needs, but only some of them, and you're pointing out other ones that are very difficult for us to address with short-term solutions at the present time.
Well, this is how it makes me feel, and I imagine it does you as well as the administrator of the building, that kind of feels like a parent of, having several starving children, and you got to choose which ones you're going to feed first, and so you got to prioritize here. We've got sciences that we can upgrade, but then there's going to be other areas that don't get to be improved. I think, though, your priorities are right as far as science. The cafeteria, definitely, having seen that, I think it makes sense in the commons area. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be served hot lunch there. They could be, there's a lot of students that take sack lunch. And I think that dovetails with the looking at open campus, because when that was first brought up, actually that kind of rang as a potential solution for me. But in those communities where it may work somewhat well, it's usually where the high school is located on the same side of the interstate as all the fast food joints and so forth.
And in speaking with the administrators of those schools, for instance, the administrator from Menominee simply said, they moved to open campus and it wasn't long, and they, shifted it right back. There's such safety and security issues in making sure you know who's coming into your campus, and what kids are, the safety in terms of driving out amongst the community, we know we would have kids racing out to get
30 minutes to get lunch and get back. And then we already tried to beef up our safety and security by
Right.
posting somebody in the parking lot to be able to check all those cars back in.
Right.
You're going to have more tardies.
Right.
So,
Mr. President?
yes.
A couple more questions, sorry. Can you just describe the timeline again, Tim?
We've got about roughly 3.5 to 4 months for the, if you look at construction documents, getting proposals, and then before we put the first nail in the wall, so to speak. And then over the summer, we expect in June to start construction immediately after school. And then we're hopeful that we're going to finish prior to school starting.
Okay, thanks. And then the next question, I guess, is just in the parking scenario where we're going to cut off parking for sophomores, which I'm sure will have a few folks upset. I'm sure if I had a 10th grader, I'd probably be excited that I wouldn't be burdened with traveling all over the place. So just a question, because we use St. Pat's, is that correct, for some parking today? Are there any other nearby locations, for instance, I think it's a Presbyterian church just down the road a little bit? Am I between us and the Y? Am I right? I mean, am I bringing up I'm just curious. I mean, that's a close location for us to see. Is there any reason that we could check to see if that parking would be available even as an option? I don't know, but there'd be a nice short walk, for instance, and something that might open up some additional parking. Listen, I mean, it's a bad situation, so I just want to make sure we're exploring all the options and having the right conversations with the right people. Just a question.
Well, and maybe even that turns into a sophomore parking site where very few sophomores drive, right? Because at the end of the year, there's more, but obviously, the beginning of the year, there's very few that have their driver's licenses by that time. So I don't even know what the number is that we're talking about.
Right now, we have 70 permits sold to sophomores. at this
70?
point.
70? In the beginning of the year, how many did we have?
We sell them at the beginning of the year. We don't know when they start using them, but
Okay.
they have to purchase them at the beginning.
It doesn't need an answer today. I know
I will
I'm not
take
expecting it to be
direction.
prepared. Maybe unless it's been explored before and it's not even an option, but just something to think about. That's all.
One of the pieces, it would become an additional space then that we would need to monitor and do, security on as well. So that would definitely be a consideration, but.
Sure. Yeah, you might come back and say it's a terrible idea, Bruce. I can't even believe you brought it up.
Maybe it might be worthwhile, because you talked about this at least one of the committees, how sophomores or underclassmen, freshmen as well, get to after-school events, get home. Certainly we have a bus system, so transportation is provided home for those students that are not within walking distance. But you also talked about how freshmen and sophomores get to practices and other places.
So right now, what happens if students are enrolled in after-school activities? Frequently, we have students getting rides from other students. I think that's a pretty typical event that occurs, that students simply get a ride to go to football practice or to go to swim practice or some of the other athletic events that they go to. Typically, it's simply up to students to sort of decide how they're going to get to that particular after-school activity with our fields, off of our high school site.
Any other questions, concerns? My last comment would be on those portable classroom trailers to add more classrooms. It was actually something I explored when I was down at the state education convention, and they had a booth there. those aren't cheap. And they're not really built necessarily for being temporary either, because the guy bragged about how he's had them at one school for 20 years. I don't think we want portable trailers for 20 years, but we go back to the cost that Tim mentioned, and you got a lot of ancillary costs that go with that would be much more expensive than the improvements we're proposing here.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I move approval of the short-term plan for the Hudson High School as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of approving the short-term plan at the high school as proposed, say aye.
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 Those opposed, it passes. Next up is the architect and engineering consulting services contract. Lynn, would you introduce this? And I guess Tim's going to help you with that.
I'm actually going to just turn it right over to Tim in light of what time it is. So it's 9:10, so I'm going to turn it over to you, Tim.
All right, I got the hint, really quick, right? All right, so just quickly, a little background. This is the document, the contract here is a culmination of the effort of the ad hoc committee, Sandy Gerke, Jamie Johnson, Jim Stayskull, Mary, and myself.
And Bruce Hanson.
And Bruce, yes, I'm sorry. So all that committee reviewed 6 proposals from 6 different firms and narrowed it down and interviewed 3 firms. And Bray Architects is what the consensus was of the committee. And so, very quickly, what they're going to be doing for us is, if we go to phase 1, the evaluation, they'll be evaluating the current middle and high schools in alignment with strategic vision, the core spaces, the actual sites, the physical sites themselves, and safety and security. They'll have a draft report available by mid-March and a final report by late March. The phase 2 portion is exploration of options, so that ties in with what's happening with the community engagement process, and that's really studying the different types of options, creating, tweaking, evaluating options in a highly collaborative series of meetings with conceptual design, budget detail that can be used, building space programs, identifying the number and types of spaces required. Again, conceptual site plans for new and/or affected existing schools, floor plans, and preliminary project cost analysis. One other thing they'll do, if warranted, is they will look at analysis of potential new sites, again, if warranted. Moving through the document, the compensation piece. So for phase 1, which is the evaluation of the current secondary schools, it's $23,800. Exploration of options for phase 2 is $37,400, and they are proposing a potential new site analysis if needed, again, for $4,500 per site. If the architect is engaged to support the district with a potential referendum, they'd actually credit back about $33,500 of the phase 2 costs. Their compensation for reimbursables is pretty favorable. Actually, the overall fee is very favorable here. They won't be charging for transportation or out-of-town travel, so that's certainly a pretty large savings. Things that it does not include, if we have to have boundary or topographic surveys, that's something that would be extra. Soil borings, geotechnical services, traffic impact studies, environmental analysis and abatement, any DNR, environmental permits. There's several different things outside of the scope of this contract, but again, this is the contract before you, and we'd like to get approval on that.
Okay, well, we just had a report on the short-term solution, and one of the things that was deferred was an analysis of the hallways and increasing passing times. Is it possible that that analysis of our current high school's hallways be part of that 23,000, that first phase?
It's possible, yeah. We try to work that in for that fee, included in that
Right.
fee. Yeah.
But, this is the first architect committee I sat on. It was a unanimous choice that Bray was the best of the ones that brought forward. We had several that submitted proposals. We picked the best 3 we thought to interview, but then of those, I thought Bray And Bruce, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, again, I thought they all did a nice job in their presentations, and certainly nice to see their participation and willingness to want to get engaged. But yeah, I think Bray had a very cohesive, presentation. They also were very fluent in community engagement process, and have been engaged in a number of those. I think also they had some very good ideas and support and recommendations around, creativity and the next generation learning that we're going to be needing to prepare for. So very impressed and excited to be working with them.
Right. Bray was also clearly the most experienced. They had the highest percentage of, dedication. I think it was 85% they're dedicated to school projects. And they have, in fact, they're doing Prescott. So they're doing already a project close to us. And they've worked for other similarly sized districts. They even mentioned that the Sun Prairie one and how they were involved in that community engagement process, and that the result in Sun Prairie was not necessarily what they would have, recommended as the optimal solution, but because of, the public, looked to compromise and come up with a solution, that's what they did. And final point that I'd like to emphasize is that this is a selection of an architect engineering consultant for probably approximately the next year, up, give or take a few months, wherever that takes. But this is not any commitment for them to be designing any remodel or building of any secondary space. This is just reviewing. And I like the way they split their contract, and also the timing of it fits perfectly with what we've set up for our stages for our community engagement process. We're talking about finding out and developing the needs through into April, and that's exactly what they're proposing. Is by end of April, they would have those needs assessed of the buildings and then move into options and solutions, and that's where they're a bigger part of there. So I think it fits good. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Lynn, second by Tom. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Passes. And we're now on to the district calendar for 2016-17, as is our planning model that we approve the calendars 2 years out. So, Dave?
So I'm sensing you'd like me to skip over the longitudinal history of Wisconsin school
Please.
calendar law?
Yes.
Alrighty. So just highlighting a few points in the 2016-17 calendar. The guidance the last time we went through calendar review was to make our best effort to make sure the school year doesn't extend deep into the summer months. With that in mind, we made some choices along the way, and you can see that our first day of school is September 1st, which is in accordance with Wisconsin law. Last day of school is on June 8th, actually, is the last day of school. I want to point out two things because they're different from previous calendars. You'll notice in October and February, 3 orange squares that represent evening parent-teacher conferences. It is still just 2 evenings of parent-teacher conferences. They're just spread out in such a way that there's one school or one level that is at a different night, which allows staff members and community members to ensure that they have proper access to parent-teacher conferences. In addition, I'd like to point out spring break week is March 6th through March 10th, which is the second week in March after the week with a Wednesday. We did that to accommodate ACT, which will be held the first week in March and the third week in March. Sandy brought forth some new information that we will consider as we look at this in the future. But with that, everything else is essentially the same as it has been in the past.
Okay. Any questions regarding the calendar? But I think Dave hit all the highlights with regard to, we've got a stationary spring break now. It used to be moving and alternating between years, and we've tried to move up graduation. We've got the seniors graduating before finals for the rest of the high schoolers and so forth. Is there any questions? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion by Bruce. Second by Carrie. Any further questions? Comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the 2016-17 calendar as proposed, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion is approved. Moving on to our action items, safety and security camera upgrade. This is, Tim, would you just fill us in on what's being proposed and how did the 4 proposals come in?
Sure. Yeah, so this is part of that multi-year safety and security plan that you've been apprised of at certain points in time. So this is actually one of the larger pieces, was improving and upgrading our security cameras at every school. So this affects every school, does not affect the Administrative Service Center. But first I want to thank Nancy Toll, our IT coordinator, and Jim Stasko, our Facilities and Grounds coordinator. They did a tremendous amount of work putting together an RFP, walking the different vendors through and defining what the needs are. We had 4 proposals in, and you can see those listed there in front of you. There's annual support fee included with some of those vendors. The first thing is what they looked at was did those bidders meet the requirements? Did they meet what was being asked for in the proposal? And so 2 of those, Marco and Electro Watchman, did. The other thing is very important is did they attend the walkthrough? It's important for them to attend that walkthrough so that they get an idea and a perspective of what it is they're actually being asked to do as far as installing cameras, locations, etc. So we had 2 of those proposed, or 2 of those did go through the walkthrough. The last 2 down there where you see those prices that are extremely low, those proposals were missing equipment. Some of the equipment was not of comparable quality, and so there were vast differences, and that's why you see that. But if you look at the 2, I would say the most qualified proposals from Marco and Electro Watchman, they're within, that 349 to 384 range, so they're pretty close. And so the proposal would be to approve Marco to do that installation of the security camera upgrades.
Any questions? And you would note that for our budget, we had budgeted $350,000.
Yeah, we just about hit it right on the mark.
Yeah. I needed to give you kudos there for your
I will pass those
estimate.
kudos along to Jim Stasko and Nancy Toll because they came up with that number.
All right.
They did very well.
Any questions, or is there a motion?
Mr. President, I move approval of the security camera upgrades as presented.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the security camera upgrades, and I think you did mention it, but this is a continuation. We have a 3-year plan for safety and security, trying to space out, balancing the immediate needs with the cost and trying to spread that out over 3 years, and this is something that was part of that 3-year plan.
That's right, yeah.
So, is there any other comments or questions? And there's a motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion passes. We now move on to consent items, and I would entertain a motion with the language including the expenditures.
Mr. President, I'd like to move approval of the consent items and that the Director of Financial Services be authorized to pay bills in the amount of $1,282,501.27.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Lynn, second by Tom. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the consent items are approved. We are now on to...
Mr. President?
Yes.
If I may, just to speak about a couple
You had to
retirements.
speak really fast again.
Yes, I was ready to jump in there. We had some significant retirements again. Our deadline for retirement application was February 1st, so now we have the total list of those who are retiring, the ones you just acted upon, the new retirement notices. Just to mention quickly, Kim Amarelli, teacher, a second grade teacher at Rivercrest, 26 years in the district. Dave Gorman, school psychologist at middle school in Hudson Prairie, 23 years. Ann Seitz, a teacher at EP Rock in the LD department, 40 years of service.
Did you say 40?
40
Okay,
years.
wow.
Cynthia Van, teacher in Spanish at the middle school, 33 years. Linda Walbren, a music teacher at North Hudson, 15 years. And Ann White, a Spanish teacher at the high school, 10 years. In addition, we have Vicki Hansen, who is a secretarial assistant at the middle school, 15 years, and Suzanne Brooks, who's nutrition services worker, Holton, 19 years. So just on those tonight, we have 181 years of service to the district. for all the retirements that we're acting on, or that have been acted upon up to this point. We have 19 retirements, 428 years of service cumulatively, so thank you.
I want to thank all those people for their service to the district and recognize there's a few names that are quite familiar that I either taught my children, or in the case of Vicki Hansen was there when my kids when I'd be bringing them in tardy because they overslept, and she'd help write the excuse. That's it goes back a few years. So, all right. Any other comments or questions about that? Thank you for that recognition, Andrea. We're on to committee reports, and I know we want to spend about 15 minutes per committee talking about what we've already talked about. But what I will do is dispense with committee reports, except that I want to note there's one exception. I mean, we acted on pretty much everything that the committees discussed, and in some detail in the hours that we spend in those committees. With the one exception was the strategic compensation, and we got a progress report on the teacher salary structure. I want to say that I guess I heard it twice, once in, I heard it in finance. I guess maybe personnel heard it as well, because I stepped out at that point. But from what I did hear, I think that is excellent progress on that. I know we're going to be taking action at a future meeting about it, but I'm very impressed because I know this is not easy, and that there's been districts that have scrapped their systems after they've enacted them. So we want to do this right, and appreciate your work on that.
Exactly. If I could, just, Mr. President, just I appreciate your brevity about all the committee reports, but I think the teacher salary structure that's being worked on, I think, in an excellent manner with our staff and led by Andrea and others, that it's really addressing, I think, the criteria that this board has set forth. And I'll just name those. I think it addresses retention. I think it addresses our ability to retain the best. It also addresses performance measurements, quantifiable measurements, as well as subjective measurements, I think, that we'll take into account. Number 3, it will appeal to high performers. This will attract high performers. Number 4, it'll create an equal opportunity for people to advance. Doesn't mean that they will automatically advance. It gives them the opportunity to advance. Number 5, and finally, maintains what we've created over Mary's tenure, and that's a wonderful development of collaboration with our teachers. And so I'm very proud of the work that our staff has done. It's not done, but the concepts that we've looked at in our committee has been outstanding. So I appreciate your pointing that out, even in your brevity of the reports of all the committees, which I agree with.
Well, and echo the collaboration part, because that's what I'm really impressed with, is how this is being received by the teacher leaders and that you're working with, and very impressed with the collaboration that's going on there. So.
Okay, I have one more bullet on that, and it's fiscal sustainability, because it's just one of the ones that we didn't mention, but we don't want to create a compensation structure that we can't support into the future. And with the changes in Act 10 and teachers losing that visibility of what is my career path, the way that Andrea and her team laid it out, and I'm really excited for when the whole board gets to see it, but it's very clear to an educator in our system how they will have a clear career path that they can define, they can control. It's within, their control and how they move forward in that system.
So just to update you, it's moved beyond what you've seen, but it retains all of those things you saw or talked about.
That's great.
Mr. President?
Yes, Carrie.
One further point about that they've done a good job of recognizing is it encourages and recognizes teacher collaboration amongst themselves.
Right, yep. Very good. Well, I wanted to get to the matter actually we added to the agenda yesterday, just under the deadline, was this scheduling meeting dates. So everyone get your phones out. This is probably the most important job that a school board ever does, and that's hire its superintendent. And so something that we haven't had to do in 10 years. Nobody on this board has ever done it, but we're in the process. Job has been posted. We've developed what I think is an excellent profile with community involvement in that process as well. I'm convinced we're going to get the right person for this job, but we just got to be able to set aside the time. It is solely the school board's responsibility to hire this person. We have, a meeting where the slate's going to be presented. We're going to do initial interviews, March 14. And we tried to set dates aside back in December, and I know how hard that is with work calendars and so forth. But what I would do at this time is, it looks like we have only 4 board members that are available on the 16th, 17th, 18th. And, but we would have 5 board members available for the 23rd, 24th, 25th. So I would propose moving it to the 23rd, 24th, and 25th. Unless there's an objection or somebody sees a reason not to do that. One of the things that our consultant, Ted Blazing, who's with HYA, emphasizes that you don't want the process to go stale once you get it started. There's also the danger that these people who are applying may actually be applying to other districts as well. And if they get offers while we're waiting around trying to schedule second interviews, we may be aced out of some of our top candidates. So our goal, again, is to, by the end of the day on March 14th, have our 3 finalists. I think it's probably better not to have to turn around anyway on the 16th with interviews to begin with. Have at least 1 week anyway for folks to catch their breath. But this process, remember, is not just the board. It's administration. There's going to be groups of teachers. We're going to try and involve a segment of non-school officials, put it that way, into this process. And so to do that, that's why we need to set the schedule tonight, because all that takes a month to get set up, rooms reserved, and so forth. So with that, is there anybody that has an objection changing it to the 23rd, 24th, 25th?
No.
All right. I'll take that as Bruce is speaking for a collective board.
And the 30th.
And then now, we're moving this for you, Bruce, so you can be there, you know.
That's right.
All right, now we have to pick a date in order to then have the discussion. And I would like to try and have it with as many people that can be there. We knew going into this when we set up these dates that Lynn has that longer trip. It's a group trip that takes her out of the continent, and she'll be returning on March 30th. I would like to involve her. She's going to have a chance to meet all the candidates because that initial set of interviews is going to be participated in by all school board members. So everyone will have had at least one face-to-face contact. So the question is, we have March 30th set aside already for a work session. We didn't know exactly what we're going to be working on. We have some ideas of how we could fill in and make it a full 3-hour session. Or we could just dedicate it just to this process of selecting the superintendent, which is the preference of the group. And do we do it on the 30th, the 31st? One other recommendation that Ted Blazing said was not to let more than a week go by between your last interview and when you select. So it makes a pretty tight window as to what we can do with the nights that are available, unless you guys want to do this real early some morning on the 31st or something. But
How many are available on the 30th, Jamie?
well, I believe everyone. I know that your plane assumes all your connections coming from Australia are going to be on time. Then,
I'm flying in at 4:30.
4:30, you're going to be here. We can
So
afford you a 1-hour
As long as you guys don't care
nap.
if I have red eyes and bad breath, I'll be there.
Should we say, what should we say, 7 p.m.?
Sure.
How about let's say 7:30, and that we will start the discussion of the superintendent search, and then we will, to be determined is whether or not we utilize that 6 o'clock, because I think we had been scheduled to start at 6.
Mm-hmm.
And if we do have something that the rest of us board members can work on while you're en route, Lynn,
Yeah, and
then
I can
we'll
keep
do
you
that.
posted as how things are going.
Okay. So unless, I did speak to Sandy, And I think Brian communicated via email to Ted that he's available on the 30th. I know Sandy Gerke's available on the 30th, so well, that's what we'll do then. We'll make it the 30th at 7:30 is when we're making that decision. And of course, can't announce it publicly until we've got an acceptance and until we have all the background checks and so forth, check out, so references and whatnot, so.
So just a clarification, board members, I think based on what Jamie said, should put in their calendar 6 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Work session, 6 o'clock.
At the ASC, March 30th, yes. Any other questions on that process?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned.
Good job, Jamie.